Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's public hearings. I'm Kevin Murdoch, Mayor of Oak Bay, and I will be chairing tonight's public hearings. There will be two public hearings this evening. The first is Heritage Designation Bylaw for the property located at 1566 Hampshire Road, and the second is the Heritage Revitalization Agreement Authorization Bylaw for the property located at 2031 Runnymede Avenue. As we gather here, we just want to acknowledge that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Coast and Straits Salish peoples. Specifically, we recognize the Lekwungen people, known today as the Songhees and Esquimalt or Kasapsum Nation, and that the historic connections to these lands continue to this day. Before we begin, please be advised that these public hearings are being live webcast, and the recording will be archived in the district's website for future viewing. Personal information, including your image and personal opinions, may be collected and disclosed as part of council proceedings on the video. When presenting to council, if you are acting as a representative of a resident of Oak Bay or speaking of another party, please ensure you are not disclosing any personal information about that person for which you do not have consent to do so. Next, I would like to outline the protocols for tonight's public hearings. I'm just going to repeat this once for both hearings, so you don't have to listen to this twice. Everyone wishing to speak will be given an opportunity to be heard. I ask that the speakers limit their initial comments to a maximum of 3 minutes so that everyone has an opportunity to speak. Once everyone has had an opportunity to speak, those wishing to speak again may do so if they have new points to present. Please keep comments respectful of council, staff, and other members of the public. All comments are to be directed to Mayor and Council and must relate to the related bylaws. The purpose of the public hearing is to give Council an opportunity to listen to the views expressed by the public. Public hearings are not an opportunity for the public to learn details about the application. This opportunity occurred through the previous meetings and presentations and within the staff reports provided to date. For the information of those present tonight, either in person or online, public hearing binder, or for those present tonight in person, public hearing binders which contain all written submissions are available for review if anyone wishes to comment on those submissions. As chair, I will reserve the right to conclude any presentation made by any member of the public, council, or staff that does not relate to the proposed bylaws, is disrespectful towards any other person, or is repetitive of views that the individual speaker has already made known to council. Finally, council members are here to listen to the public's opinion with an open mind. No one has prejudged the outcome of these applications. The order of business for the public hearings follows a formal 7-step process as follows. First, the planning staff will introduce the proposed bylaws. Second, council will formally receive written submissions provided prior to the public hearing. Then, late submissions will be read aloud and formally received. Fourth, the applicant's submission will be received. Fifth, council will ask clarifying questions of the applicant or staff. Then, members of the public will be invited to provide comment on the bylaws. And then the public hearing will be recessed or closed as determined by council motion. So moving to the first public hearing tonight is for Bylaw 1566 Hampshire Road, Heritage Designation Bylaw 4884-2024, pertaining to the property located at 1566 Hampshire Road. I now invite planning staff to introduce the purpose of Bylaw 4884-2024. Is that Mr. Green?
Good evening, Your Worship, members of council. This public hearing relates to a heritage designation. The property owners submitted an application to the district on August 23rd of this year to have their property formally heritage designated by bylaw. Essentially, the purpose of the bylaw number 4884 is to formally designate the subject property as a protected municipal heritage property. Happy to answer any questions that council may have. It's a fairly straightforward, simple bylaw, so I don't see a need for a bigger presentation than that on this application.
Thank you very much, Mr. Green. I now need a motion that the written submissions received and distributed prior to the public hearing as attached to agenda item 2.2 be received. Moved and seconded. So should I read out the mover and seconder? We don't for council, but for public hearing, does it matter? No, we're good. Moved and seconded. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Not opposed. Has the corporate officer received any additional submissions at the public hearing this evening?
No, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you. So we don't need to have those received. The applicant is not present for the proposal. as I understand it, just confirming that. Okay.
That's correct. Yeah.
So then I just turn to council, and does council have any questions or for clarification of staff? Not seeing. That is this next section then is the public input portion of the meeting. So any members of the public who wish to come forward may do so. We have an experienced member of the public coming forward, so you can help demonstrate. Experience in experience, not in age. You may just.
Cutting it there.
So if I might just, and you can help demonstrate this, you need just people to turn that off for a second, we'll give you a better microphone. When people come forward, you can push the button in the middle to turn on the microphone. Just state your name, your full name, first and last name, and municipality of residence. You don't have to give your address. And we will accept, if anybody is online wishing to speak, this is the time to do so as well. You can raise your hand within the Zoom app. Please go ahead.
Pat Wilson, South Oak Bay. As a long-term heritage advocate, this has been reassuring for all of us involved in heritage that a homeowner has come forward in this day and age and is willing to designate their home. I'm sitting here to add to anything you are going to discuss here that we really appreciate these homeowners. And I wanted to personally say thank you to them. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. Yeah, we've still got a bit of a noisy microphone, so we'll replace that one as well. Is there anyone else who wishes to come forward and speak? I just want to make sure that people, if you're members of the public on Zoom who wish to speak to council, please use the reactions tab at the bottom of the screen to raise your hand. If you have joined by phone, you can hit *9, that is *9, not #9, to raise your hand. If the user ID and passcode for Zoom are located on the agenda package. Again, I'm just going to remind anybody who's speaking that your name and comments may be recorded in the minutes of the public hearing and form part of the permanent public record. Anybody else wish to speak to council on this bylaw 4884? So I'm going to call for a second time. Speakers are invited to speak a second time. If they're adding new or additional information, or if anybody is here for a first-time speaker, please come forward. This is the second call for public input. And I'm just going to change my view here so I might see. Then please be reminded that this public hearing is a final opportunity to provide council with comments prior to the potential consideration of this proposed bylaws. If there's any additional written submissions to be included in the public record of the hearing, you must provide that submission to the corporate officer now, prior to the close of the public hearing. So this is the third and final call for public input on bylaw 4884 for 1566 Hampshire Road. I now declare that the public hearing is closed. And now that the public hearing is closed, no further submissions or comments from the public or interested persons can be accepted by members of council before considering the matter at council. Please be advised that should council need clarification or staff opinion on issues raised at this public hearing or the information associated with the public hearing, council can request such clarification from staff after the close of the public hearing at the following regular is tonight, scheduled immediately following this public hearing here in these council chambers. So do we need to do any switchover for the next public hearing? Are we good to continue at this point? Good to continue? All right. The second public hearing tonight will be for bylaw 2031 for bylaw 4881 2024, which is pertaining to the property located at 2031 Runnymede Avenue. I now invite planning staff to introduce the purpose of bylaws 4881. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. As you mentioned, this next public hearing is for Heritage Revitalization Agreement bylaw number 4881, and it pertains to 2031 Runnymede Avenue. And I'll just briefly go over a couple of points about it. There we are. Whoops, yeah, I see. So this slide just gives us a general overview of the location of the subject property. It's outlined in yellow towards the left of the map. You can see it's in the R4 zone, close to our border with Victoria to the west. In general terms, the purpose of 2031 Runnymede Avenue Heritage Revitalization Agreement Authorization Bylaw number 4881 is to enable the district to enter into a heritage revitalization agreement with the owners of 2031 Runnymede Avenue. And the HRA will allow additional density by facilitating the creation of one additional R4 lot on the south side of the subject property. Building plans have not been submitted for the proposed lot, but it will be in the R4 zone. No variances to that zone are requested with this application. The applicants have agreed to pay community amenity contributions in accordance with Council's CSE policy, and the precise amount of CSEs payable would depend upon the number of units that are built under the terms of the R4 zone. This is an overview of the proposed subdivision. I have outlined the larger parent parcel in orange, which would contain the Blair Gowie house post subdivision, and the proposed new lot is shown on the south in green. And that is all I've prepared for the introduction. Thank you very much. Sorry, just to note as well that the owners are attending virtually online tonight.
Great, thank you. I did see them online. That's great. I now need a motion that the written submissions received and distributed to the public hearing as attached to agenda item 3.2 be received. Opposed. Has the corporate officer received any additional submissions at the public hearing this evening?
No, Your Worship.
Hearing that, I understand the applicant is online, so if the applicant wishes to present to council, you are welcome to do so at this time.
Hello, good evening. Can you hear me?
We can, and welcome. If you can just again
Thank
state
you.
your names and municipality
sorry.
of residence for the record.
I'm Ann Hillier and I live in Oak Bay. Bruce Wilkin and I own the property located at 2031 Runnymede Avenue. Since purchasing the property in 2013, we have continuously worked to rehabilitate the house and the garden, which had been the subject of considerable deferred maintenance. This application for a heritage revitalization agreement began in early 2023. Our application is to use an HRA to subdivide our existing property, which is a lot of approximately 41,400 square feet, and includes a heritage home built in 1916, in exchange for continuing to upgrade and maintain the house and the garden, and to provide a building lot that could contribute to the district's need for more housing. We are proposing a new lot created on the south portion of our property. It would be a conforming R4 lot of approximately 13,336 square feet, leaving the heritage house on a lot of over 28,000 square feet. Although this property was designated heritage in 1980, that designation does not require any ongoing maintenance of the property, and that was evident when we purchased it. In contrast, the HRA of 2019 requires ongoing stewardship of the heritage house and the land. The HRA incorporates a conservation plan providing that, among other things, ongoing maintenance is done in conformity with the standards and guidelines for the conservation of historic places in Canada. Recent work to the property includes completing the garage on the north side of the property with a water detention system installed under the garage, completing the fencing on the north side of the property, resurfacing the circular driveway and the driveway off Runnymede Place with pavers, restoration of the landscape between the garage and Runnymede Place, as well as the area east of the driveway off Runnymede Place, reseeding the lawn to the east of the heritage house, which you can't see from the street, and redevelopment of the garden along the north side of the backyard adjacent to the newly constructed fence. In March of 2024, Council requested an updated statement of significance for the property in conjunction with our application. We retained Cummer Heritage Consulting for this purpose. Dr. Cummer reviewed the character-defining elements and the statement of significance for the property. The latter was last updated in 2015, and we submitted her report to Council in October of 2024. Dr. Cummer's report notes that the character-defining elements do not refer to the large lot size as one of those character-defining elements. The report also reviews the changing size of the parcel where the Heritage House is located, and she covers the period from 1907 to the present. Notes that the property's evolving lot size could be argued as part of its historical value in illustrating its role in the development of the community. Further, the report notes this holds true for all of the earliest developments in the Runnymede Heritage Cluster, all of which have been subdivided at different times to provide much needed additional housing to the neighborhood, as is currently needed. Those are her comments from the report. In summary, our application supports the ongoing preservation and maintenance of a significant heritage property in Oak Bay, as well as it supports the current housing policy of council, which has been evolving over the time of our application. Thank you for considering our application this evening.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hillier. With that presentation complete, does council have any questions for clarification of either staff or the applicant at this time? Councillor Braithwaite.
Thanks so much. And just a clarification from staff for the current owners. This is actually the second subdivision that they've done on this lot, so going from 1 lot to 3 lots. So can you just please remind us at what point does a subdivision fee occur, at 3 lots or at 4 lots? Thank you.
Mr. McStravick?
Through your worship, could I just ask for clarification about what you mean by subdivision fee, please?
If I may, there's when there's multiple, like 1 lot divided into, say, 4 or more lots. I think it's 4, but there's a compensation either in terms of public land or money in exchange, and does that kick in? Mr. Bull?
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, yeah, there's a park requirement or a Casanlu requirement in the Land Title Act. It applies when you create 3 or more new lots. So in this case, we're creating a second new lot, so this would not come into play at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. Don't see any other clarifying questions from council at this time. So then we go to the public input portion of the meeting. Each speaker will be provided up to 3 minutes to speak. For members of the public attending in person who wish to speak to council, you can raise your hand and I'll invite you forward. For members of the public on Zoom who wish to speak to council, you can please use the reactions tab at the bottom of the screen to raise your hand. If you've joined by phone, you would hit *9. Again, it's *9, not #9, to raise your hand, and we will see you here in the app. If you're watching on the live webcast on YouTube, but you wish to speak to council, you can join the Zoom meeting, and the meeting ID and password are located in the agenda package. For all speakers, just a reminder that your name and comments may be recorded in the minutes of the public hearing and form part of the permanent public record. Please begin your presentation by clearly stating your name and municipality of residence. If it's helpful, if you can state if you're in favor or opposed to the proposed bylaw, and then providing your comments. So at this time, I'll welcome members of the public who wish to speak to the Heritage Revitalization Authorization Bylaw 4881 for 2031 Runnymede Avenue. Please come forward. For some people, reason people get a little flustered when they come to sit down. So again, just name and municipality of residence, and off you go.
Hello, can you hear me? Good.
Yeah, thank you.
Your Honour, elected councillors, Oak Bay residents, my name is Eva Lupin. I would like to briefly remind the council and inform Oak Bay residents of several vital issues concerning the proposal for the next subdivision of the heritage properly located on 2031 Runnymede Avenue. Oak Bay Municipality has been warned that agreeing to the developer's request to the first subdivision would set a precedence for another subdivision, and it is. My husband and I live on 77 Mountjoy Avenue. It shares the southern border of the remaining part of the heritage property, which is exactly next to the proposed subdivision. On March 11th, 24, a large development sign was put up on the front fence behind the large bushes, misleading the neighborhood by calling it Heritage Revitalization Project and not indicated the proposed 2 buildings on the new lot, nor the required site servicing plan. According to the company Talmac Urban Forestry, which surveyed the trees for the developers, a large percent of the trees could be destroyed due to blasting large areas of rock needed for construction of the driveway and houses. Out of 23 trees allowed to remain, 17 trees are at a great risk. Talmac was not provided with the location of an accessory shed. Our adjoining garden had not been surveyed, and we were not offered the required security deposits for significant trees, Bylaw 4759, 4326, 4742. According to arborist Osprey Tree Service, out of the many large trees on the northern edge of our property, 7 were selected as being of specific concern because they are mature trees with large structural root systems that are both extremely valuable as living trees and are an extreme risk to the residents. Among them, there are 3 Garrya oaks, 4 leyland cypresses, deodar, cedar, and a Pacific yew. Moreover, installation of necessary underground services might also destroy protected trees on 2 neighboring properties across the road, on 776 and 2027 Mountjoy Avenue. According to blasting permits in Victoria, the blasting company is required to provide evidence of third-party liability and property damage insurance in an amount not less than 5 million for any claims which may arise from the proposed blasting. Who is responsible for issuing insurance? The developers, the blasting company, or the municipality, which is responsible for making the final decision.
Ms. Lupin, that's your 3 minutes. You can come back up again and speak again. We'd just like to get everybody a chance to speak once, and then you can come back up and continue your comment.
I don't think that there is anybody else who had any courage.
There may not be, but we'll try first, and then we'll invite you back up. Thank you. Thank you for that. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak to the open portion for this? And I will ask online if there's anybody who wishes to speak. I don't see, so I'll invite speakers are invited to speak a second time. Again, we have for new and additional information, the same process as before. If you can just state your name again, just for the record, so we have it on
Thank
on
you
our
very
minutes.
much, Your Honor. Eva Lupin. We have been obliged to employ a structural engineer to conduct a pre-blast assessment of our house, as the whole neighborhood is aware of the previous blasting caused damage to an adjacent house by a flying rock. My question is, as the promised restoration of the heritage house has been completed, what is the point and moral justification for allowing such an act? And who is going to bear the cost of providing the infrastructure to the heritage land? On September 9th, 2019, the developer stated, the house is now largely completed. On March 11, 2024, the planner Kyle Max-Stravik wrote that the list of future work presented by the developers does not include any work which stands to directly benefit the heritage property. On September 16th, it's a big break. Now to finish. On September 16th, 1992, the richest man in the world, the infamous George Soros, who broke the pound and the Bank of England, cynically stated, you don't actually have to change the laws. You just need to change how they are enforced. Incidentally, he made $2 billion on that. I sincerely hope that the elected representative of Oak Bay residents will not follow his advice. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other, this is the second time we're taking second tranche of 3 for public input. Anybody else wish to address council, either online or in person? Okay, just please be reminded that this public hearing is the final opportunity to provide council with comments prior to the potential consideration of these proposed bylaws. If there are any additional written submissions to be included in the public record, of this hearing, you must provide that submission to the corporate officer now, prior to the close of the public hearing. So this is the third and final call for public input. Anybody else like to come forward? Oh, please come forward. And if I just might guess, while you're coming forward, I have a question of staff. Procedurally here, I heard a couple of questions asked from the previous speaker. Is it appropriate to direct those questions to staff now, or is that to be done later in the meeting when we consider the bylaw? Just to hold this, I'm just going to get my question answered first, and then we'll come to you. Go ahead, Ms. Plouffe.
Thank you, Your Worship. That would be your decision.
Okay, thank you. Welcome.
Don Craig Daly. I live on Mount Joy Avenue. I've got a question that I noticed if you put the lot through or subdivide it, it is in a single family area, and I read through this, that there's things there for multiple housing on the same single lot. Is that correct?
That is correct. So with the changes of the provincial bylaws, all lots are required to allow a minimum of 4 units per lot. That's
Does
true
that
of
have-
every lot of every municipal site in all of British Columbia now.
Interesting. Okay, that's what I had wondered about. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just going to ask forward my question that I sort of heard asked there, just so I can just think it's helpful to have answers in the room. The question was asked, why would there be a heritage revitalization agreement where there's no specific changes to the heritage home? Perhaps we can just talk to that, where that is required if there is a heritage building. Mr. McDravick?
Thank you, Your Worship. As council is aware, this property was subject to a previous heritage revitalization agreement, which was entered into in, I believe, 2018. And so as such, the only mechanism by which it's possible to add additional density to this lot, if the owners wish to, is through a new heritage revitalization agreement. A heritage alteration permit is not able to change the density of a protected property. So in the case that the owners wish to try to add additional density here, the HRA is the mechanism for them to do that through. And so
That's helpful.
it's up to council to weigh whether or not the perceived benefit is worth that. In this case, there isn't a strong contribution in terms of improvement to the heritage resource, but there is the proposal to provide a community amenity contribution. So that's the proposal.
Thank you. And the second question was just, and I'm not sure if it's answerable or not, but the question was, do we know the impact on the underground infrastructure? I think it stems out of a previous work that was done on the other stretch of face of the property. And do we have a sense of, if this goes forward, what the impact of that would be and who would bear the cost?
Thank you, Your Worship. There's existing underground utilities on Mount Joy Avenue, which would be required to be extended northward to reach the proposed new lot. And those utility upgrades would be at the cost of the proponent, of the developer in this case. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. So that was the third and final call for public input. So the public hearing, I will now declare closed. This public hearing, now that the public hearing is closed, no further submissions or comments from the public or interested persons can be accepted by members of council. Please be advised that should council need clarification or staff opinion on issues raised at the public hearing or the information associated with the public hearing, council can request such clarification from staff after the close of the public hearing at the following regular meeting of council, when third reading of the proposed bylaws are being considered. That meeting of council is scheduled immediately following this public hearing here in the council chambers. So with that, conclusion of the public hearings, plural, we will now, just need a movement. Do I need to move adjournment, or do I just declare it closed? my route here, just Ms. Plouffe?
Thank you, Your Worship. You just closed the public hearing.
Okay, thank you. So I now declare it closed. With that, we have a 1-minute pause to just reset our timing, but our timing is remarkably bang on. We're like at 7 o'clock to the second, so we will just move on from there. Just give me the thumbs up when we're good to go on the. Okay, thank you, everyone, and thanks for your patience. We just cut everything over there. The time is now 7:01. I will call to order our regularly scheduled council meeting of November the 25th. As we call this meeting to order, I just want to acknowledge that we are gathering on the traditional territories of the Coast and Straits Salish peoples, specifically the Lekwungen people, known today as the Songhees and the Esquimalt, or Kasapsum nations, and that their connections to these lands and adjoining waters continue to this day. Up, we have approval of the agenda. Moved and seconded. Thank you. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. We have two adoption of minutes, both from November 12th, 6:30 and 7. Councillor Braithwaite and Councillor Patterson for approval. Are there any corrections, amendments, or changes to those minutes? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. We also need to receive the Committee of the Whole meeting from October 21st. Moved for receipt. Is there a seconder? Seconded. Thank you. Don't debate generally. Oh, Councillor. Oh, go ahead, Councillor Appleton.
Well, thank you, Your Worship. So just with respect to the Committee of the Whole minutes of October the 21st, just on page 4 of 6 of those minutes, I note that it begins with public comment and question period, refers to Mr. Jacques Silois. Mr. Silois is with an S rather than a C. And I do note that the minutes reference thanking the Sea Change Marine Conservation Society for their efforts of eelgrass removal, when in fact it's actually enhancement of eelgrass that they are doing. Mr. Sirois was speaking to a program of taking plugs and then moving them throughout the area, so that may have been misinterpreted as removal, but it would properly be eelgrass enhancement. Thank you, Your Worship.
It's the advantage of seeing Committee of the Whole minutes twice, that we get to catch them the second time around. Thank you. So with that amendment, any other changes or corrections? All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Thank you, everyone. Just a very brief comments here tonight. First, I just want to express my thanks to our council and to the Council of Kasapsum or Esquimalt Nation. We did have a chance to meet recently in a council-to-council capacity, and just working to find areas of shared interest between our communities, and I'm just very appreciative of both councils' willingness to do that work. That work continues. Really want to give a big thank you to both the Oak Bay Business Improvement Association as well as Oak Bay Parks for the incredible light up. For anybody who was there last night, it was a great event. A few thousand people with, I don't think anybody wasn't smiling when the lights came on. So I appreciate also the fire department for their participation, and to Mr. and Mrs. Claus who took time out of their busy schedule to show up. And just for interest of council, this week is a fairly busy week with external meetings, including the Regional Transit Commission meeting, Oak Bay Police Board, and several CRD committee meetings for me, so we'll have more to report on that at the next meeting. That concludes my remarks. So very brief today. We do now move to public comment and question period. So this is an opportunity for people, members of the public, to address council on items that are not on the agenda. So items on the agenda will have an opportunity for public input. So we'll call you forward at the time of those items. But we do provide space in our meetings just for members of the public to come and talk to us about things that might be of importance to them, ideas, thoughts that are related to district business. So sometimes we have a wave of people and sometimes we have nobody. So I'm just throwing it out there. It seems like most people here are here for specific items. So, but if there's anybody who wishes to address council, this is the chance. If you're online, you can raise your hand as well. But I don't see anybody online who isn't people who would know. Okay, with that, we will move on to the main part of the agenda. First up, we have Oak Bay Tourism Budget Presentation. We have tonight Madame Palan, who is the chair of the Oak Bay Tourism. You can come forward. Oh, Duncan. Let me just pull. if you could just, for the record, Ms. Bland, just state your name and municipality of residence, and then you can provide, or you actually don't have to say municipality of residence, just who you're representing here tonight, and then you can kick into your presentation. Welcome.
Sure. Thank you, Your Worship and councillors. I'm Madon Pellin. I am the chair of Oak Bay Tourism, and I'm joined tonight by Duncan, who is our vice chair of Oak Bay Tourism as well. And then we have two councillors who are liaisons to our committee. We have Hazel and Corrine here as well this evening. So thank you very much. I always like to begin just by highlighting who we are and how we're funded. So Oak Bay Tourism Committee has been around since 1989, and we are almost wholly funded by the MRDT tax collected by accommodations. So here in Oak Bay, currently we only have the one accommodation, which is the Oak Bay Beach Hotel. That tax is collected by the province and then distributed back to the municipality to fund our committee for tourism. So we have very distinct guidelines that we have to adhere to for our budgeting. And it is worth noting that this budget is year 3 of a 5-year budget that has already been approved by this committee. And there's no variances or anything that's out of the usual within this budget. It's actually nice to say that things have normalized for the first time since I've been chair, and everything is very reliable and something that we can plan in the long term, which is really nice. So next slide, please. This is a pretty weighted PowerPoint, so it's pretty long, so I'll try and move through it fairly quickly out of respect for your time. If at any point you'd like me to stop or if you have questions, please let me know, but I'll try and keep it as brief and succinct as possible. So moving on to the next slide. So once again, our key messages, as I mentioned, are the normalization of this year looking forward. Really, this past year in 2024, we collected higher than budgeted MRDT revenue from the hotel simply by because the hotel was overperforming what we had anticipated. It was a very strong year, and we're crossing over very favorably with a higher than anticipated crossover amount into next year. For 2025, we're forecasting a flat year for revenues, which is a conservative estimate. The hotel's forecasting just a slight increase, but we like to budget conservatively in case of variables that may come up throughout the year that are unexpected. As mentioned, we're in year 3 of a 5-year plan. And just something of note, we have been on a month-to-month contract with our current marketing agency for a couple of years now. We have gone through the RFP process through the municipality. We have received 12 proposals for this contract. We've shortlisted 3, and then we are in the process of interviewing those last 3 candidates, and we hope to have a contract in place by the end of the year. That contract will be tied to this budget, so there will be no surprises there. Next slide. Overall goals and objectives have not changed. They tie directly back into our 5-year plan, which once again has been reviewed previously. But just a quick highlight in order of importance, really to drive shoulder season visitation with effective and measurable marketing campaigns to support not only the hotel, but of our community, restaurants, shops, etc. Increase partner engagement and alignment with regular tourism communications, maintain and improve Oak Bay Tourism's visibility in the community. Much like last night, we were sponsors for the Light Up, and it was great to have a presence there. And then ensure that our actions are responsible and sustainable. Next slide. Okay. Opportunities and challenges, just very high level. So we're constantly looking for additional revenue opportunities beyond just the tax, which is an encouraged practice from the province. And so right now in our budget, we are forecasting some revenues to come in through co-op marketing, so joint marketing efforts, and it just adds an additional revenue line beyond just the tax from the hotel. It's fairly straightforward. And challenges, we had built up quite a large carryover reserve over the pandemic and have spent that reserve over the last few years to really target marketing that's been very effective. We're crossing over with a little bit less than we have in the last few years. It's not a concern or a problem, but just something to note when you look at year over year, the comparables. And then we also had some struggles this year with volunteer recruitment, so it is an area of focus for next year. Next slide. The tactical plan. Just of note, marketing, we have sort of two categories here. The always on, this is something that we do 365 days a year with our social media channel management. We also redesign maps, guides, resources, and print and store these items as well as distribute them. Travel media relations, we host journalists, travel trade support, working with different destination management organizations like Destination BC, Destination Canada, etc. And then we have seasonal activities. So we typically have a spring, fall, and winter holiday awareness campaign. And this includes a variety of different media, including digital photos, websites, etc. And then we always hold on to an opportunity marketing dollar amount that allows us in the year to take advantage of these opportunities. This year it was the Hockey Day in Canada that we were able to utilize those funds for, which was extremely effective. And in 2025, we have a few items that have come to the surface that we may be able to participate in with this opportunity marketing fund. So the next slide, please. Tactical plan activities. I won't touch too much on this. We've introduced quarterly newsletters to our members here in Oak Bay, and that started this year. We will continue it. Ambassador program. So you may have seen our bike and its big canopy when it hasn't blown over. So we are working on replacing that this year. It just doesn't quite hold up to the elements anymore. And then just updating our swag and supporting local businesses there. So the next slide, please. Annual tactical plan and activities. It's all broken down by seasonality, and it's fairly straightforward with all of the different events that take place in Oak Bay that we try and support in one way or another. Typically, we promote through marketing and some financially as well. For example, we are a sponsor for the Songhees Powwow each year as well. And we'll move on to the next slide. Continued, so with the tactical plan, our admin and finance is very lean. We keep this to a minimum at $13K for the year. And then other includes a carry forward for future years. So we're anticipating our carry forward in 2025 to be about $80,000 going into 2026. This is this is a very healthy number. This will allow us a lot of flexibility and mitigate any downturn that we might see in the year. And the next slide. This is, again, all in your pack and just highlights everything we've talked about. Following slide, please. That's great. Once again, this gives you a good comparable as to what we did this year versus what we're budgeting for next year. The greatest difference is the total revenue, and that was due to the large carryover we had the year before. Again, that's surplus from the pandemic years. And moving on, these are just some of the creative samples of what you might see out there. I'm very proud of some of the commercials that are on the air. I was just in Seattle for business, and in my room, there was our Oak Bay commercial that popped up. And then last week, I was in Vancouver working in my room again, and there was our Oak Bay commercial that popped up. My mother asked how we could afford to be everywhere. And so, small but mighty organization. There is a very short video, I think, at the end. I'm not sure if you're able to play. If not, that's okay. It's on our website, and you certainly can pull it up for yourselves if you like.
I think we might just play it at, well, if it's, how long is it?
It's less than a minute, probably
If we
30,
bring it up
45
right away,
seconds.
let's do it, otherwise we'll move on, we have a big agenda, so I don't want to.
And that's fine. It's
not
there
seeing
and
it playing,
available
so-
for anybody to see if you'd like to see it.
Can you just
And
remind us of the website for Destination Oak Bay?
That's right. I should know this off the top. It just recently changed our landing page, but it should be oakbaytourism.com, is it not? Duncan? It's not. No, we just had to redirect the website. But what I can do is I'd be happy to send that in a follow-up.
It is oakbaytourism.com.
Okay, I
we
was
go.
right the first time. That's great.
Thank you.
Never doubt yourself, right? Wonderful. Any questions?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Blind. Are there any questions from members of council? I don't, just for our clarification.
Yes.
I think we should just have a motion to approve the budget that's put forward here. I don't think it's actually 100% required, given we approved the 5-year plan, but it's probably beneficial for us to have that. Ms.
Thank
Bland,
you.
is that your understanding as well?
That is my understanding.
Okay.
And then once it's passed by council here, then we submit it to the province and then they will approve it.
Okay, Councillor.
Thank you very much.
We allow for debate and for then a vote. Councillor Green, go ahead. Oh, go ahead, Councillor Braithwaite.
I just want to say, tourism's involvement in the community has been so well received. I know it's one of your overall goals and objectives, but I think that you've really met that. As you mentioned, you helped support the light up last night and so many other activities within the community. I think they really made a difference within our community, so I thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Green?
I'll be really brief. Thank you so much for being here tonight, both of you. And just, it's a pleasure to work with this committee. And I know that Councillor Braithwaite and I really enjoy the contact. And we also appreciate how much you support and how much economic spin-off there is from tourism in Oak Bay. So you support all of our small businesses. And I think the best thing that's happened over the last couple of years is to include the president of the BIA, who is Martin Cowden. And so I think small businesses will benefit, but have already benefited from that association. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Green. Seeing no other discussion, I'm going to call the question on approval. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. That carries. Thank you, Ms. Plant. Thank you, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you.
Have a great evening. You're welcome to stick around for the rest of the night, but you do not have to. The next item on the agenda is also just does not subject to public input, so it's just a Recreation and Culture Economics Analysis Report. We have Mr. Meikle here, who is our Director of Parks, Recreation and Culture. Welcome, Mr. Meikle.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Council. I'll give a brief overview of the report here. So, as I'm sure we all recall, the pandemic certainly hit the Parks, Rec and Culture budget particularly hard. So back in 2023, the Director of Finance at the time and myself proposed to Council the hiring of a consultant to take a look at to do a study and gather some feedback as to how we might improve revenue generation in different areas and different avenues, and to ensure that we were doing so without creating other financial barriers or presenting affordability challenges in that way. The economic analysis was completed by Nichols Applied Management late summer, early fall this year. And with that, they've presented 6 recommendations forward for the department to consider, for council to consider. It's important to note recommendations 1 and 2 have essentially been addressed, and they are actually incorporated into our annual budget process and deliberations now. So 1 was the recommendation for a 4% increase this fall, which we did present to council in the fees and charges bylaw back in June and was approved by council at the time. And the second recommendation is around an annual look at fees and charges, which we've incorporated with that annual look at our fees and charges bylaw for Parks, Recreation, and Culture. Recommendations 3 to 6 all essentially propose that staff have more work to do and to bring some options back to council to look at how we might implement those recommendations. Some will generally involve either a kind of a phased-in approach to changes to pricing, et cetera, and or a choice for council to take a look at whether we take a bigger jump potentially. So I'm here to answer questions and seeking council direction on adopting the analysis and moving forward with the implementation plan. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Mr. Meikle. This really sits at our table tonight. There's no public input at this point. So if there are questions for members or for Mr. Meikle, I have Councillor Smart, Braithwaite, Appleton.
Thank you, and through you, Chair, thank you so much for such a well-considered report. I think this gives us a lot of confidence going forward. I just had 2 questions. My first question was, can you explain more about the intent of potentially restructuring of single admission tickets? I was just curious. I know that's going back later, but if you could just give us a sense of what the intent was there. Thank you.
Mr. Meikle?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to Councillor Smart. What was discovered through the process in comparison to past structures around the region, there's a couple of our passes where what you might call the discount rates are a bit off, so to speak, or a bit out of sync relative to the other regions. So for a simple example, our Pretty much every other center in the region offers a 10 times pass where you essentially purchase 9 single admissions, get the 10th one free. We're at about 8, so we have a higher discount at this point, so taking a look at bridging that gap and being more in line with the other districts. So they're all similar to that kind of, I guess over time, because the district here had not done price increases for a number of years prior to the pandemic. We're a bit out of sync there, so that's what that one's about.
Thank you. Anything else?
I think just one other question, just, in light of the news this week about Crystal Pool being potentially closed for the rest of the year, and knowing that there's a referendum coming up in February where it may be decided to rebuild Crystal Pool on the existing site. I just wondered what the current aspect of regional conversation is at this point to take advantage of, potential extra users in these moments, and are there potentially even opportunities that may come up for us with regards to knowing that we might have an increase of users, and are there areas of our pool that we want to make sure we have upgraded, for instance, before like a 2 or 3 year period in which we really don't want to close our pool because we're going to have so many users. So I just wondered if you could just comment on that sort of coordination regionally. Thank you.
Mr. Meikle?
Thank you, Your Worship. So on the top, there's a reciprocal agreement between municipalities that we all, I guess you could say, share customers because we all do regular maintenance shutdowns each year, so anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks generally. We obviously had one this past summer with our pool being closed for 8 weeks. And so our users were able to use their same passes and go to Saanich Recreation, City of Victoria, Esquimalt, etc. So that agreement is in place. So for this current time frame while Crystal is closed, again, it's a bit of a longer period, but we generally have that agreement in place just to support sort of seamless opportunities for participants to be able to utilize their existing passes, not have to go to one place and get a refund and go from there. So it sort of has that mutual benefit, if you like. For the longer term, should Crystal be closed longer, that essentially 4 weeks is probably the longest that kind of agreement without another sort of special agreement with those municipalities would go on. We did that this summer with an 8-week closure, as mentioned. So we would be looking at opportunities for new participants and new patrons while Crystal Pool was being built. I think the greatest focus for us, and which we've already felt a bit of as we've welcomed customers or participants from City of Victoria, we have some inclusion, some accessibility upgrades that need to be taken a look at, and those are currently proposed they'll be in our upcoming 5-year capital plan. So we are taking a look at that.
Thank you, Mr. Meikle. Councillor Braithwaite and then Appleton.
Thanks so much. And just kind of going on that, I guess if the Crystal Pool does close for that period of time, we would then have an opportunity to perhaps acquire some of the staff from that pool to increase our programs around for Oak Bay.
Mr. Meikle.
Thank you, Your Worship. I echo that hope, and yes, that would be great.
Thank you. And then I know that it was interesting to see that we exceed the regional average by 15 to 40% according to the report for the youth admission. So can you talk perhaps about what your thoughts are on the blending of the child and youth, and what might that category look like? And would that include even looking at a reduction in the fees to get it more in line with the rest of the region, or would we ever consider reducing the fees like that?
Not to put you on the spot or anything, Mr. Meikle.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, a little bit early to say much to that. That is certainly one we need to take a closer look at and look at how we might implement that. The initial discussions would be that we'd like to keep the child's fee where it is essentially and bring the youth fee down to match that, or maybe there's a smaller increase in the child fee and the youth fee comes down to match that. So what most places have done is similar to that model, is my understanding. Really just merging those two fee passes to recognize those under 18 and some of the affordability issues faced by families. So that's what we are considering at this moment, but would certainly bring back a plan of how we might phase that in over some time to council in the future.
Thank you. Anything else, Councillor Brisbane?
Just one last thing. Do you know, you talked a little bit about the LIFE program in the report, and so do you know how many people utilize the LIFE program, and maybe explain for those people who don't understand what the LIFE program is, what exactly it is?
Mr. Meikle?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, we have in Oak Bay approximately about 220 users of the LIFE program. That can vary between about 200 to 240-ish is probably about the most we've had in the last decade, I believe. What it is a program based on financial status for families and individuals that they can apply to. There are a number of different methods of applying in terms of I guess, proof of one's need. So that can be as people bringing their tax information forward. They can make a statement, a signed statement of what they make. They can also have an adjudicator, it might even be a physician or a counselor or a teacher at school, for example, who might adjudicate and basically affirm that the family or the children are in need. The program gives unlimited access to drop-in activities for each member of the family that's part of the LIFE program. So that means unlimited opportunities to swim and use the fitness studio and to skate for those drop-in sessions. It also provides some what we call program credits, so essentially program discounts that can be applied to registered programs, the Learn To programs, lessons. Pretty much any of our programs are open to that option. So gives those couple of streams there that individuals can apply to or can apply the discounts to. There is also a piece of the program that allows somebody to purchase a regional pass at half the price. So instead of taking the unlimited unlimited access to our Oak Bay centers, if somebody has a more regional purview, they commute, for example, they have that option of buying a regional pass.
Thank you, Mr. Meikle. Councillor Appleton?
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to staff. I just want to commend staff on the report. I've been very excited to see this report come back. When we initially asked for the report, it was hoped that it would produce some really concrete, useful information for decision making in the district. And to my mind, it clearly does so. So I was very happy to see it and just see that there's just such a substance of good information for decision making in it. So very, very happy to see it. I was just wondering whether, just with respect to recommendation 3, which talks about the staff survey and workforce analysis, which I think is going to be a key piece. We're well aware that Parks, Rec and Culture, amongst other divisions, has struggled with staffing, and staffing is consistent staffing and that type of thing has been a consistent issue, and so we're going to see more detail in this coming year. I was wondering, I'm sure Mr. Meikle could talk for quite some time about this, but I was just wondering whether he might be willing to make some general comments about how we're doing in terms of the staffing side of things, whether some of the initiatives that we put in place are gaining traction, and whether we're moving in a hopeful direction in a challenging market for staffing.
Thank you, which is a good plug for anybody in the audience who's looking for a part-time job or youth with looking for auxiliary work. This is a good chance to do it. Mr. Meikle.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I would express hopefulness as well, and we are on the positive swing there. So, for example, just even with our after-school care or before and after-school care programming, I believe we have opened up another 8 spots this fall. I might have that number wrong, so please don't exactly quote me on that, but we have opened up new spots this fall, meaning that we have been able to hire new staff and add to that staffing complement. Similarly, with our lifeguard pool, we have increased the total number of lifeguards we have hired. We're still experiencing some challenges there, however, with late night service, and that was the survey we've sent out to staff. I actually haven't quite seen the full results of that survey yet. It's just completing now. That's partly due to the age of our lifeguarding crew. So you're looking at 16, 17, 18-year-olds, many of whom don't necessarily drive for themselves. So working till 11:30, midnight, 12:30 is challenging. The last bus we understand is about 11:20 in our area, and and is a bit limited as to where it goes, obviously. So there still are some challenges at certain times in our buildings. The other challenge we are still experiencing is in our maintenance crew, and again, overnight, nighttime, midnight maintenance services are still, we're still searching for some bodies there, but certainly on the upswing, and we keep moving forward with that. We had a great summer with young staff, and a good percentage of them continued on with us through the fall, which is fantastic. So that's a great place for us to work with young folks, and we offer quite a substantial training program in the spring for those summer staff. So it's a good opportunity to bring in some new recruits there.
Thank you, Mr. Meikle. Councillor Watson, and then I want to get to a motion as soon as I can.
Thank you. Just one quick question to Mr. Meikle, please. Thank you for providing all this information. Just a question about your comments on further plans to improve financial performance, and the suggestion, the reality that you are working on increasing program offerings and yes, I guess increasing program offerings. And I just wondered, there's the staffing constraints to that, but what about the physical space constraints? Because my impression is that everything's full all the time, but clearly not if you're hoping to do this. If you could just comment on that briefly.
Sure. Mr. Meikle?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, you are right on. It is a balancing act of finding space and finding instructors to lead those programs. Where we're at now is what I would call the sort of prime time or prime interest times for individuals, and those appear to be Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays between about 10 a.m. till 2 p.m. That's when we have the most parking challenges also at our facility, and then evenings and weekends as well. So staff have been tasked with taking a look at those other times when buildings aren't necessarily as well used, and what can we find that might fit in those times. So we're in that, what you might call sort of the outer rim of looking at those facility spaces that are available and how we can program those.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillor Patterson?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and I too will echo the comments of other members of council. I thought it was a very good report and really brought a lot of clarity to council decisions around the Parks, Rec and Culture. So good on you for getting that to us. Just a couple, I'm going to follow up a little bit on what Councillor Watson just referred to, because it did talk in the report about your desire to just revisit some of the adjustments to facility hours or scheduling to meet more of what you were hearing from the users of the facility. And so I'm wondering too, out of this, if you have developed metrics for performance, because of course there is a staffing cost, but there's also operating the facilities themselves that I'm sure you're aware there's a cost to that. So have you developed metrics so that you understand what the breakpoints are, so that if you extend hours, what kind of an uptake in usage you need from the members in order to offset the costs?
Mr. Meikle?
Thank you, Worship. Perhaps not 100% clear on sort of the metrics you might be looking at. Essentially, we went through the analysis phase when we came to council and proposed cutting some of our building hours late night. And really that was a cost, basically a revenue and expense analysis of saying, here's what we see on average coming into the building. We knew at that time the majority of those folks were annual pass holders. So you can basically get an average of what they would pay per visit, and then look at what's our staffing complement necessary to keep the building open those hours. And actually past 11:30 p.m. it was about a bit of a budget deficit. We weren't actually seeing enough people revenue-wise to even cost recover the amount of staff required in the building to keep it operating at that time. So it becomes more of a community service at that point. So that'll be part of the proposal that would come back to council, is to take a look at reopening to later hours or somewhere in between there. We're again trying to get the feedback to make sure, number one, we can staff those hours, and then number two, we can present the financial analysis to council from there.
Thank you, Mr. Meikle. Anything else?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and through you to staff. Just the report also does a lot of talking about the elasticity of the rates, which was very good informative information for us. And I know in the report it does state that you're going to do a timing of a spring review of the fees and charges. And I'm wondering if the goal then is to analyze it in 2025 with perhaps an implementation to improve financial returns in 2025, or if you're going to analyze it in 2025 to look towards perhaps implementing fees late 2025 so that it would impact after the 2025 budget.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, it's a kind of an odd cycle, I guess you could say. So traditionally and historically, fees have been raised for Parks, Rec and Culture programs and services in September of each year. So we do that analysis along with the budget deliberations and then present to council in later spring. Well, we're now on the path of presenting our fees and charges bylaw by May, June timeframe to be implemented into September start. So some of that, as we just did, we did a 4% increase for this September. We'll have, 4 months of impact for that current budget year and then 8 months of impact for the upcoming budget year. So it has a bit of influence over 2 budget cycles, if you like, or 2 budget years. So we'd be back this coming spring with the next proposal for September's fees. At that point, the nice part is we will have had a look at budget. We will know what's approved in budget and be able to project forward what we'll need to impact that 2026 year, as you said.
Thank you, Mr. Meikle.
I'll move receipt.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. No, usually debate receipt of the report. All those in favor? Any opposed? Unopposed?
And I'll move the staff recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Just very quick question from me, Mr. Meikle. Just there's no reference in here to any of the private fitness or anything else. I'm just curious about, do we have a sense of where, I know this is a fairly subsidized model and that's a good thing and it provides access to people in the community, but do we have a sense of where our costs stack up against the YMCA and other entities out there that either are for-profit or not-for-profit providers?
Thank you, Your Worship. I believe the YMCA was considered in this. I could be mistaken there, but it generally is considered as part of the public delivery of recreation services in the region. The challenge with comparing to private sector either fitness or recreation services is it's hard to get an apples to apples comparison. I'm not aware of any private fitness facility in Victoria that has both options of a pool and drop-in sessions at a pool, hot tub sauna, as well as an ice rink for skating, as well as a gym for drop-in sports, etc. So it's hard to sort of get a sense of, if somebody were to buy an annual pass through a private fitness center, how that compares to buying an annual pass through a public recreation center when we have that ability through the subsidized model to offer much more amenities, much more included within that price range. So private sector was not considered in the scope of this analysis. It's just very difficult to get a sense, a real apples to apples comparison there.
I'll leave it there. Thank you, Mr. Meikle. Motion's on the floor for the staff recommendation. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. That carries. Thank you very much. We move on to section 9. These are items that do involve public input. The first one up is the 1387 St. David Street. This is a reconsideration of a matter that came before council there were a couple of council meetings ago from October 28th. I'll hand it over to staff here. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. Before us again today is 1387 St. David Street, development variance permit for the relaxation of the rear lot line setback and the interior lot line setback. The applicant is proposing to reduce the rear lot setback by 0.72 meters for the proposed setback of 0.78 meters from the required 1.5 meters, and the interior side lot setback from reducing it by 0.59 meters to a proposed 0.91 meters from the required 1.5 meters. This variance would, in effect, allow for the change of use of the accessory building to an accessory dwelling unit. And if there's any questions, the applicant is here in the audience.
Thank you very much, Mr. Muller. And just for clarification, I think what I'm going to do is just for those who aren't familiar, but I think probably most in the room who are here for it are, this came before council on October 28th. There was a presentation, public input, and debate. There was only 6 councillors in attendance at that time. The vote failed on a tie, so I just used my power as mayor to bring it back. And so we have all 7 members of council to have this item again. Bringing it back does allow for, again, continuation, so we'll have public input, and then we'll have council deliberation, and we'll get to a vote on the matter. I do want to, so I think if council's amenable to this, usually we have questions of council or staff, but we've gone through this already once, so I think what I'll do is I'll go to the members of the public, invite members of the public who wish to speak to the variance to come forward, and if you're online, you can raise your hand as well. We can have that public input, and then once the public input is concluded, we'll come back to this table and have deliberation on the matter. So with that, I will invite members of the public forward. I'm just going to ask, just because we've already had public input, if you submitted things in writing, we do have those letters in writing on the record, so you don't have to come back and read them again. We've read all of them, even the late submissions. And you're welcome to. We won't stop you from doing that. But mostly we're here just to listen to points of view. I'm also going to ask, notice in the correspondence there's a little bit of finger pointing. We're here to debate the merits of the variance. We're going to try and keep our focus on the variance itself and the validity and of the land use aspect of this, if at all possible. So with that, welcome members of the public to come forward and address council. And generally speaking, we're going to keep kind of like we did with the public hearing. I'm going to ask people to keep their comments to about 3 minutes, so everybody has a chance to speak. And if you want to come up a second time, I'm happy to let people do that. But go ahead. You can give her the example here, name and municipality of residence.
Sure. My name is Johan Bosman. I live on St. David Street in Oak Bay. Mr. Mayor, Council, I had a very long speech prepared for tonight, but I think too much has already been said about and written about this application. So I'll try to keep this short and factual. To start, I'd like to apologize. I'd like to personally apologize to any council members who believe that we jumped the gun with this application or skirted their bylaws. The truth is we have never acted in bad faith, and we've made the best decisions based on the information that was available at the time. I'd also like to apologize to our neighbor who's present here at 1383 St. David, who feels impacted by this building. We too have been affected by construction in the past, and know firsthand it can be very upsetting. If I could pick this building up today and move it 2 feet over, I would happily do so. But the reality is more complicated. Moving this building further away from the side lot line would destroy many more trees, including a Gary oak and a large double cedar that gives the neighbor and us privacy from the apartment building behind. Privacy that you told us was important to you. You may also not see it this way, but we spent countless hours weighing the building size and height and siting against neighborly factors like your privacy, tree coverage, and bedrock. As to the other neighbors present tonight, we appreciate your opinions, but none of you are actually impacted by this building as it is completely invisible from your homes and from any public street. So I would like to bring us back to the facts of the variance application. Based on the latest zoning bylaw that Oak Bay adopted a few months ago, this building now requires a 23-inch variance from the side lot line to be considered a housing unit. Provincial law and policy clearly state that municipalities should support and expedite variances to help create more housing. Just to be very clear, this is 23 inches. Right, this is the variance that we're talking about tonight. Nothing more, nothing less. We believe that 23 inches does not create any hardship or a material difference in the experience of our neighbor, especially not compared to what this building might look like if it were further away. It could be twice the size, it could be double the height, and it could have windows facing into their backyard. We also do not believe that 23 inches should matter more than our basic human right to provide safe, age-in-place housing for an elderly family member in need. A grandmother who suddenly lost her husband of 49 years in a very traumatic way during the COVID pandemic. I'd like to ask all of us to do the human thing tonight. People make mistakes. None of us can wind back time. So we can continue to beat each other over the head with facts and technicalities and make a capital offense over 3.1 feet versus 4.9 feet. Or we could all take a deep breath and realize that maybe there is a human side to this story, a story that involves real people and families and kids and grandmothers. And we might just realize that perhaps the current building is the least worst option for all parties involved. Finally, if there's anything we can do to further reduce the impact on the neighbor, provide for new fencing, plant new trees, hedges, paint the building, cover it with a green wall, we have offered this before and we'd still be happy to do so. Thank you again for your consideration. We kindly ask for your vote in favor and sincerely hope we can all get some closure tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Bozeman. Others here to speak to council on the matter? Please come forward. Same process, name, municipality of residence, and speaking to the variance. Turn the microphone on, please.
Dr. James Stockdale of St. David Street, and I am speaking regarding the variance proposal before us. Thank you very much for allowing us the opportunity of speaking again, Mayor Murdoch and members of council. I am speaking out against the proposed variance. My wife Deborah and I support accessory dwelling units in general, but we are opposed to the surreptitious process undertaken to build the structure in question, as well as its placement or siting. On the other hand, we support the Borlands in their quest for justice, given the damages inflicted upon their property. Building bylaws are in place in order to ensure appropriate construction methods, to assist architects and engineers, to ensure safety, and to seek cohesion within the neighborhood and the community at large. Bylaws prevent haphazard development, and without them there would be chaos. Building bylaws also protect the rights of all individual property owners. They can rest assured that if bylaws are adhered to and enforced, then everyone is treated equally. By so doing, there is harmony. There is no cause for dispute. This is unfortunately not the case with 1387 St. David Street. And here is why this predicament has become so damaging, as why it has blown so much out of proportion. And that's why I'm focusing on this particular issue, is the damage that has been done to the community of St. David Street, the disruption that is caused. Deborah and I strongly believe that everyone should obey the law. We also believe that no property owner should be given the right to negatively affect a neighbor's property in pursuit of their own objectives, lawfully or otherwise. And it is not our property that's been affected. Our property is not. It's the Borlands. We are not angry with Mr. Bozeman and Ms. Ubeda, but we are wary. Yet they are angry, very angry with us. And it is not us breaking the law.
Dr. Stockdale, just if you can just not just speak of other people, just speak to the variance and your impact.
Well, I'm sorry, but this is part of it. My point is that there is a great deal of anger and unhappiness. People will not acknowledge other people as you walk down the street. And I think this is a huge problem that came out of this. This is a problem that did not have to be in place. I think we want happy communities, communities where people are friendly with each other, support each other. This is certainly not the case on St. David Street now. And that is the issue that I'm addressing. I've addressed the issue about, that Mr. Bozeman has pointed out as to how far you are from the property line, et cetera, what it means with the trees, et cetera, et cetera. This is talking about harmony in the neighborhood.
Sure. Sorry, Dr. Stockdale, I was just, you were attributing anger and so forth to somebody else. I just asked you just to keep it on just not to speak of other people's feelings, that's all. You can speak to your own.
Well, as for an example, I'll tell you, I alluded to this in a letter for the previous meeting. When I was confronted on my front porch.
Okay, I'm not gonna this is not relevant to the variance. If you can just speak to the variance. And maybe you've exceeded we're at 4 minutes of the 3 minutes. Maybe if you want to come back up a second time. But I want to keep the focus here on the land use issues here. If you can maybe perhaps.
Well, one thing I was going to ask of you is regardless of the outcome, our neighborhood will require mediation to facilitate a return to civility. And I'm asking you, Your Worship, that we will require assistance in this regard, and I'm asking for your assistance.
If you have assistance, I will do so.
Thank you.
I'm going to go to someone online. I'm going to call them. I have Charlotte Bowman name showing. If you could, you've unmuted yourself. Just state your name and municipality of residence for the record, then you're welcome to speak.
Hi, Charlotte Bowman, Oak Bay. So I'm here to voice my support for the variance request at 1387 St. David Street. I understand that change can be upsetting and experienced this firsthand through my experience with a similar process for my house at 1416 St. David Street. There was huge pushback from the neighbors, and now my house has become a poster child for creative housing solutions. I would much prefer to see this type of gentle infill solution that maintain the character of the neighborhood and by keeping green space, trees, permeable surfaces, and streetscapes, while allowing for aging in place with the support of family. Alternatives, more often than not, do the opposite. This variance is a much better alternative compared to the alternative, which would be the construction of an additional structure on the property. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bowman. I had a hand in the room here. Please come forward. Same process as before.
Council, my name is Mark Borland, and I live at 1383 St. David Street.
Welcome.
My family and I are the neighbors most affected by the building being discussed here today. Now, I have already covered a number of reasons why we believe that this motion should be rejected, both in my remarks at the previous council meeting last month and in my rather lengthy written letters, which I'm sure you're getting tired of reading by now. So I will try to keep it brief and not revisit the same points again. One thing I do want to reiterate, though, is the fact that this discussion is, at least in our eyes, absolutely not a referendum on infill housing or densification. Our opposition is specific to this building, the deceitful process by which it was built and permitted, and the total disregard for bylaws shown by the applicants. We really have no desire to prevent anyone who wishes to go through the established process from building an ADU on their property, so long as it meets the bylaw requirements adopted by council this past June. That includes our neighbors at 1387 St. David, who are more than welcome to modify or move their building to meet the setback requirements. The integrity of the permitting process, however, is important. As I'm sure you're well aware, there is a significant portion of our community that is already highly skeptical or downright opposed to densification and infill housing. And while I may not personally share their opinion, I think that it's important that the district demonstrates a commitment to a fair, consistent process and clear, sensible bylaws to govern permitting and construction of new housing units. The infill housing bylaws that council adopted in June, including specific, clearly defined setback requirements, were established for a specific purpose, not arbitrarily, and they help to ensure that anti-housing or housing-skeptical residents, that there will be clear rules and requirements for ADUs, and that no homeowner in Oak Bay needs to worry that their neighbors may be exempt from those bylaws. As far as I'm aware, variances are intended to allow for minor relief in situations where individuals face undue hardship. In this case, the applicants could have built an ADU that actually complied with the setback requirements. They could have been transparent, honest, and followed the proper process that all Oak Bay residents should be required to adhere to. They chose instead to deceive the district planning department, their neighbors, by building an ADU before the bylaws allowed for it.
I know, I understand there's a lot of feelings here. Whenever time people speak of each other being intentionally deceitful and so forth, if we could just maybe speak to the piece. We have the letter here, what your take on this. It feels very divisive at this point to be sort of talking that way.
I'm just sticking to facts, but okay.
Thank you.
So what is the undue hardship that justifies a variance? that they wanted to build their building 6 months sooner, that they wanted an extra 100 square foot of backyard space, or out of self-interest at the expense of their neighbors. Is this enough of a reason to bring into question the integrity of the permitting process and the district's commitment to a fair and transparent application of bylaws? Allowing a housing at all costs, build it first and ask for forgiveness later approach by granting this variance is exactly the kind of decision that fuels anti-housing sentiment and erodes trust in the integrity of the process and the enforcement of bylaws. It also rewards deceitful behavior and continued disregard for bylaws at the expense of neighbors. And I don't believe this is a message that council should or indeed wishes to send to our community. Thank you for your time.
Your timing was impeccable, by the way, right on 3 minutes to the second, even with my interruption. Anyone else wish to come forward and talk to council on the matter? I'm just going to check online. No, please come forward. Same process as before, just name and municipality residents.
Yep, my name is Deborah Stockdale, and I live on St. David Street in Oak Bay. Mayor Murdoch and respected members of council, thank you for the opportunity to speak. Given the information we have, there has been a conscious error made in the building of the garden suite at 1397 St. David Street. This was an egregious mistake made by a professional in her backyard, knowing that there may be consequences for the siting once the ADU, masked as an accessory building, was completed. And here we are debating the reconsideration of the variance. In my mind, the answer is clear. Move the structure that has been built and has been lived in to the setbacks that the bylaws have mandated. Once it is the appropriate feet away, a hedge can be replanted, as it had been, between the two properties. The beauty of both properties will be restored, and neighbors can become neighbors again. I have to admit, this is a really lovely unit. Jim and I have a large backyard, and a similar dwelling might possibly be a good decision for the two of us as we age in place in our beloved Oak Bay. The major difference is we would consult with neighbors, adhere to the bylaws so that everyone is happy. The District of Oak Bay, those who live next door, and us. I am confident that all of us in this meeting and those watching online are in support of ADUs. We all care. As this is the new bylaw, set the bar high and have garden suites built according to the strict Oak Bay building bylaw. No variances and no exceptions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stockdale. Do others wish to come forward and to speak to council on this matter? Please come forward. Same process as before, just name and municipality, residents, and welcome. Oh, microphone first. Thank you.
I'm Kathy Ubida, and I don't know much about all this variances and everything like that. I'm the grandmother. And these are my babies. And all I want to do is live in my little house with my kids and just be happy for how many years I've got left. I'm 75 years old. I'm not going anywhere, you know, and that's all I have to say, you know. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ubeda. Are there other members of the public who wish to address us on this matter? Last chance before I finish. I have no other hands of anybody online at this point. If anybody is online, you should join the Zoom meeting, or if you're watching, you can hit *9 to raise your hand at this time. Otherwise, I'm going to conclude the public input. Yeah, please come forward.
My name is Pamela Ubida. I live at 1387 St. David Street.
like my husband, I could say a lot, but we're trying to keep it to the points of the variance. I think the one thing that has not been acknowledged is the timelines. The planning for this project started 3 years ago. That's it. Bylaws were released barely 6 months ago. I understand if somebody was coming forward now with a new build, wanted to trick people, you know, and move forward that way, I understand how that'd be a problem. But the fact is we started this 3 years ago with the Oak Bay Planning Department. We worked for a year with an arborist and a structural engineer for 1 year to come up with a solution that worked for all of the things we were trying to protect, things that our neighbors cared about, things that we cared about, also occupiable height, which nobody talks about, but trying to create occupiable height of 10 inches while not putting a slab on grade is impossible. So we spent a year doing that, and not just a year, like one meeting every 6 months, continually. We had the same arborists that our neighbors had when they went for their variance and removed their trees for their variance. So I just want everybody to remember that this all started 3 years ago. And we have been in communication with Oak Bay from the minute we purchased the property to see what was allowed, to see what options we had to this day. And we have followed their advice at every step. We have been completely open with everybody about our future plans. Before we got the building permit, the inspectors advised that we future-proof it because things were changing soon. And as we all know, things changed quickly all of a sudden. And we got stuck in the middle of wanting to provide a legal accommodation for an aging parent who just lost her husband of 50 years. We had a different path we could take. We could have gone through the OCP infill, which is still active and was active as of 2014. We meet all the conditions to do so. And then the new legislation came out and we spoke to planning and they advised that this is a better route to go, that it was a simple variance and that it made sense. We have a fully supported application by planning, by the fire department, by the engineering department, by the parks department that has been presented to you today. The last thing I'd like to say is obviously this whole process has been extremely stressful and taxing on us as a family. And personally, professionally, I have had things circle back to me from clients, things I hear on the golf course. I've had people try to shut my business website down on Google. And so I'm gonna keep fighting for my mother. And whether this gets passed, which I surely hope it does today, or not, the fact is we still need to provide housing for her. And so, as my husband said, this is the least worst version for everybody. So tonight I just want to kind of remind everybody, again, the 7 professionals who have signed off on the application, the geotechnical engineer, the structural engineer, the code consultant, myself, the builder, et cetera, arborists, the entire planning staff who fully support the application, like I said, fire department, engineering department, parks department, our 20 neighbors on St. David Street who we have signatures from, 91% of Oak Bay taxpayers that are in support of infill housing, hundreds of professionals in BC who have contributed to the research and drafting of Bill 44, the thousands of people who have fought and advocated for the human basic right of housing during the housing crisis, and the tens of thousands of people in BC who have insecure housing, many in Oak Bay, are children, parents, grandparents, sisters, brothers, and friends.
Thank you, Ms. Ada. I think it's probably just helpful for us to have some clarification. I think there was obviously staff involvement in all of these pieces. I think at this point, the point of approval pieces is to an accessory building. And then I think just from, we're all clear on here, and the request here is for a variance to change that approved accessory building, which does comply, is this, and that's the report we have in front of us. So I just want to make sure we're clear. This process didn't start as an ask of an ADU. It started with an ask of an accessory building, which is being asked now to being used as an ADU in those changes. So I've got staff, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to infer otherwise.
Nope, that's fine. I just want to make sure we're clear on the timeline of those pieces. Thank you. Any other members of the public who wish to speak to us at this time? I see nobody online or in person raising their hand. Nope, okay. Going to come bring the matter back to this table then. So we have at this point, there was no motion made because we have that process was sort of brought back here. Our general policy here is to move the recommendation on the thing, and then we can have a debate on that motion. I don't think we need to have a receipt of the report again. I think we can just get to the motion on the piece. Councillor Watson?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I will move the staff motion, and I'll read it out if you'd like, or part of it, that the development variance permit, DVP 00156, to reduce the interior side and rear lot line setback for a proposed accessory dwelling unit on the property located at 1387 St. David Street be approved, subject to the following condition. I don't have to read that out. I don't have to read that part out. It's about an extra issuance of a report to state some technical things about the actual building.
Thank you. Is there a seconder then? Moved and seconded. Thank you. Oh, sorry, Ms. Plouffe.
Thank you, Your Worship. The motion was already on the floor because you brought it back for reconsideration.
Okay, there we go. I thought because we had public hearing again, or public input again, it wasn't live on the floor. So moved and seconded previously. So it's live on the floor. It's owned by the entire body. At the end of the day, we were here to have a quick debate, or a long debate if we need it, to discuss the merits of the application. Councillor Watson, you didn't actually make the motion this time because nobody made a motion this time. But is there anything, I just ask everybody to listen to each other with an open mind on this one, and we'll come to a conclusion at the end of that. You're welcome to start.
Yes, thank you. I moved the motion the last time because I think that the request is very reasonable. This is a minor variance, and the consequence of not approving it are pretty significant in terms of lost housing or additional costs to the owners who have made a significant investment in providing a beautiful dwelling unit on their property. The building itself at the reduced setback that exists right now is hardly intruding. Well, it's not intruding on the street at all. It only bears some relationship to one property next to it, and because of the things that have already been done in the building design, it minimizes all the things that often come up in these situations, like lack of privacy, noise that can't be attenuated. It's a fully accessible suite, which is an added bonus, and I do think that variances are allowed, and it's an important job of council under our current legal framework to consider the kinds of hardships that would be felt without them. I think it would be fair to say that going forward, in any situation, regardless of what the rules are, there are always legitimate reasons to ask for variances. So that the suggestion that we should never do that in any situation is unrealistic, and that's why the variance exists as a tool for local governments to use. So I think this variance request is fully supportable. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Anybody else wish to speak to the matter? Councillor Smart?
Yeah, thank you. I will just add to those comments that our bylaws already find this building form and siting acceptable as a garage. And I just don't feel right saying that this building is acceptable as a garage, but we wouldn't consider it as a house for somebody to live in. What we have before us, the form is already compliant as a garage, so we were looking at the safety issues, and I do feel like staff has addressed the safety issues in this report.
Councillor Green?
Yes, I'm the councillor that was not here the last time, so I am the new voice on this application. I really appreciate the time and effort that it's taken to bring it back, and thank you to staff, and thank you to the public for coming tonight as well. I listened to the full debate the last time. I've done as much research as I have ever done on an item like this, and I'm very sorry to hear that it has caused such neighborhood angst. So that's my first statement, and I think that's incredibly unfortunate. I hope that you will find a way forward to mend those fences, no pun intended. I have thought about this very seriously. It's a very difficult decision. First of all, I know that this is the first application that we have received under the new bylaw that we enacted in June of this year. I believe it was June 2024. And therefore, I also know the amount of time staff took working with us to get it right. We spent a lot of time on the revision and formation of this new bylaw. And one of the concerns I heard over and over again from everyone sitting at the council table was that there were certain values that Oak Bay reflected, that they wanted reflected in the bylaw. So I think fair and consistent treatment is certainly one, but I also realize that there is still, I understand, and I will ask staff through you, Your Worship, to staff, I believe there is still a concern about the fire load on this property, and I read that in the report. Has that changed since the last report? Thank you.
Mr. Muller?
I'm sorry, Mr. Muller.
Through you, Mayor. The concern for fire load was addressed, what we feel was addressed through the motion that was put forward to have a third-party report done to assess the building at the time of building permit, or sorry, retroactive building permit, to ensure that all of the non-combustible material and all of the other fire-resistant elements that have been stated are in fact there, and that there is in fact reasonable, that is this fire resistance is reasonable within its proximity to the neighboring house. Yeah.
Mr. Bull?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, so in short, no changes. Just want to point out this is not a retroactive building permit. It would be a new building permit for a new conversion. Thank you.
Thank you. I know there were concerns raised about fire load and access to the property as well from the street. I also, so that was an emergency services issue. The other issue that I'm concerned about is public health and safety around the issue of not being able to access the property through emergency services from the street. There is no laneway, so it means that a fire truck could not access from the back either, so there are some real concerns about that, I gather. So the safety, proximity to fencing, large cedar trees, and neighbors, that fire load issue for me is still an issue. I'm also concerned that we're setting a precedent on the very first application that we've received under the new bylaw, and setting a precedent by granting a variance potentially. That is a concern to me. As I say, we spent a lot of time on that bylaw, and there is anxiety in the community, I think, generally about what infill will look like, what impacts it will have on neighborhoods and neighbors. And so I think these are legitimate concerns. And as I say, I have given this a lot of thought. And at this point in time, I'm not prepared to support the application. Thank you.
Other discussion? Patterson, Braithwaite, Appleton, and then myself.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And this has been a very difficult decision. I concur with much of what Councillor Green has said, but I've also listened to our staff, listened to the applicant, listened to other people that have spoken here tonight, and I really appreciate everyone coming to the meeting. And I too feel very badly that this has caused such angst in the community. It's not what we wanted. And certainly as a first application, it's not been a stellar start to an accessory dwelling unit. However, I spent a lot of time walking around the property, and I also listened carefully to what Councillor Watson said, and I guess now I'm of the opinion, last time I did not accept this, but I am of the opinion that moving the building would not necessarily remedy all of the ill will. That's going to take the community to do it, but I think that the environmental impact of relocating the building with the large Gary oaks on the property. If we lost some of those Gary oaks and did more intensive work on the property, I don't think that would achieve a better feeling in the neighborhood. So I, in fact, am going to support the option 1 as it is presented this time.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Councillor Braithwaite?
Thanks very much. Yeah, I agree that it's really unfortunate that this has caused so much angst within the community, within the neighborhood. However, I have not changed my mind since last time. I strongly feel that we need to stick with the setbacks and the bylaws that we've set in place, especially as this is the first application that has come forward to us, and we need to see how it works for the community. I think that we owe the community that, to see how these new housing bylaws, et cetera, that we're putting forward are going to affect our community. And so I will be voting against the motion. Thank you.
Councillor Braithwaite, Councillor Appleton.
Thank you, Your Worship. Speaking against the motion on the floor, I will just keep my comments. I won't reiterate everything that I said last time, but I will keep my comments factual. I will reiterate my interest in a consistent and fair and predictable process. What was applied for with the original building permit was an accessory building. It was an application for an accessory building, and the bylaw standards for an accessory building applied at that time. The permit that was issued was for an accessory building. When contraventions to that building permit were identified during the course of the build, those were clearly communicated to the landowner that, in fact, the accessory building was what was permitted for, and those components of an ADU that were being incorporated needed to be decommissioned. So this was clearly communicated to the landowner that this was a condition of the permit, that the permit that was in hand was for an accessory building, not for an ADU, and that the standards for ADUs were not in place. The building is permissible and usable for the use that it was applied for. It is an accessory building. There is no need for extraordinary intervention to move, decommission, or otherwise intervene with the building. It is a fully legal building for the purpose for which it was applied, which is an accessory building. So there is no need for extraordinary intervention. There is no obstacle to the landowner using it for the purpose that it was applied for and the permit that exists for it. So these things are factual. Staff have included in their report the mention that they did communicate to the landowner that there were components that did not conform to their original building permit, and corrective action was taken, and have reiterated the fact that the building permit and the bylaws that applied at the time of permit issuance were the standards. All of this is factual. That's the basis of my reasoning. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Appleton. So I appreciate everybody's comments here. I want to acknowledge on the neighbors, particularly the immediately adjacent neighbor. This is I'm no doubt that from the pictures probably has an impact on their side lot view. And it's not, I guess a couple of things I just want to, in terms of the comments, it is the first time this council has seen an accessory dwelling unit come to this body, but in truth, I don't think it's actually the first application. There's applications and we just don't see them because they're following the current bylaws, which we are now in place since June of this time. What we have is an application to convert an accessory building that was built and approved ahead of the current bylaws. So I'm looking at this in two ways. Is it reasonable to grant the variance of an existing building? And I would say, I think if this building had been there for 10 years and the ask was in front of us, we would see it as entirely reasonable. I think the question here, is getting a bit blurred, is the proximity of the application, and I think the anticipation of the builders, the owners, that they could convert it at the time, not knowing the actual rules because they weren't in place. So they anticipated that they would be able to. The rules we have put in place were not what they expected, so we're here in a variance. But if they had built the same accessory unit 10 years ago, I think we'd probably be sitting here saying it's quite reasonable to say it's an existing building built to the rules and to be allowed. I'm also just aware of some of the history of variances where relatively minor variances were opposed by neighbors, and the net result was actually negative for the neighbors when it got turned down. There was a case, probably shouldn't mention any specifics, but where the variance to allow a view corridor was fought against, and the council turned it down, and in fact the primary neighbor lost their view corridor as a result, because that was what the intention of the variance was. So it's not always in the best interest of those pieces. So, I think, I also just sort of should address, what I read in the report and what I hear from staff here is that the fire safety issues and so forth are dealt with. Like, that is the purpose of the second part of this motion, is that is considered. So I think if I'm looking at this from the context of, I appreciate there was an anticipation that was different from what we implemented, but I treat this in many ways as I would if anybody came to us and said, okay, your rules are in place and we want to relax that. There'd have to be a very compelling case made for that. In this case, we have an existing building, and I don't really differentiate whether that was made 10 years ago or a year ago or 3 years ago when the process started. In that piece of it, I think that I have to weigh the relative size of the variance against the relative impact on neighbors and the applicant. And in this case, I do find that the ask for that is reasonable, and I do think that if it was turned down, the net on the neighbors would actually be more negative. I do think if there is a need for an accessory dwelling unit, that wouldn't have a necessary piece. So I appreciate this one as one of those ones that has caused an enormous amount of division in the community, and one of the reasons that we tend not to encourage people to apply for variances, especially on new builds, because it tends to drive this kind of wedge between neighbors. But we do have to consider the merits of each application as it comes before us. So that's where I'm landing on this one at this time. Anybody else wish to speak before I call the question? Go ahead, Councillor Green.
Yes, thank you, because I didn't really have the option of being here the last time. I just want to say that my understanding of bylaw enforcement is not that we enforce on hypotheticals or that we approve permits retroactively. My thought is that we build something, we see it, it's a visual, it's tangible, and we then look at that as either an approved or not approved build. If what you say is true, if neighbors, that almost feels like, a threat to the future of neighbors. If they don't cooperate with whatever is going on, then it could be far worse. I think that's probably a wrong-headed direction to come from, and I think it's wrong-headed in a way as well to approve something hypothetically. And it has been a very divisive issue, and I'm sorry about that. But I think I like to deal in the here and now and what I see before me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Green. You're right. My intention was not here that it would get worse automatically. I've seen that in the past, so I was just sharing my experience. I appreciate that clarification. Any other discussion before I call the question? All those in favor? And those opposed? I have Councillor Green, Councillor Appleton, and Councillor Braithwaite opposed. That motion passes. So the variance is approved. I don't think there's anything else on this item. Oh, let's go. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. If people who are here for that agenda item, you're welcome to leave at this time, or you can stay if you wish to deal with it as we deal with the next item on the agenda. And I will take your call on that one as to the. Oh, I do. I voted the affirmative unless I vote against. Moving on to item, as I let people file out of the room, moving to item 9.2. This is just a report coming forward from the Committee of the Whole, from Director Robertson on I'll just let people clear the room so if you can continue the conversation and we can continue the business. Okay, I'm going to move on to item number 9.2, which is a State of the Infrastructure Report. This is from the Committee of the Whole meeting. It is still subject to public input. Because we've already had a discussion, debate, and discussion and debate on the matter, I'm just going to invite any members of the public who wish to speak to us on this item to speak now or raise your hand if you're online? Seeing no hands on the State of the Infrastructure report, I'm just going to suggest that somebody move the recommendation from Committee of the Whole, and we can have a discussion. Is it moved and
So
seconded?
moved, Your Worship.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on this item? Not seeing any. I will call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. That carries. We move to item 9.3, which is the 2025 regular council and committee of the whole meeting schedule as laid out here. Ms. Anderson, are you presenting this? Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, members of council. The purpose of the report before you is to seek council approval of the schedule of the 2025 council and committee of the whole meetings. The report outlines that the schedule is a requirement of the community charter and is further determined by provisions outlined in the council procedure bylaw. I would like to take this opportunity to note that following the publication of this report, it was identified that we did not include as a grayed out date Friday, April 18th, which is Good Friday. This date does not impact the schedule as presented, and staff will update the schedule to include that date following council decision tonight. Thank you, and I would be happy to answer any questions related to the proposed schedule.
All right, thank you very much. Are there questions? Yeah, Councillor Smart?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, to staff. I just had a couple questions. One was, when do we expect to have the proposed financial plan meeting schedule, and is it possible to not have it during spring break when families are away?
Ms. Anderson?
Staff are discussing that schedule right now, and it was outlined to occur in March. So we could take that feedback back, and unless other staff have anything to input, we can certainly take that into consideration.
Okay, appreciate that. It's this last 2 weeks of March this year, or the spring break. Councillor Smart?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, my other question was just with regards to, did staff consider adding October 6th as a council meeting to make up for the fact that we only have one council meeting in September? Is that something that staff would recommend to do more proactively, or did they carefully consider that it's better just to add it as a special meeting later?
That's an excellent question, since I asked it earlier. Ms. Anderson?
We could certainly add another date as a special if council wished.
Yeah, I would suggest probably, I saw the big gap, that either September 29th or the October 6th would probably be two logical pieces. If we're keeping in more of our keep of two meetings per month, then the September 29th might be a good option. September 22nd is within UBCM. So I might, subtle suggestion of perhaps suggesting that we might amend this to include September 29th in the regular meeting schedule. But I hadn't had a chance to make that suggestion yet, but you caught the same thing as I did, Councillor Smart. Do you wish to move an amendment to include September 29th in the meeting schedule?
As I wasn't prepared with that date, I'm just quickly looking
Sure.
at that.
Ms. Anderson, do you have anything to suggest? No, I just saw it.
Sorry, through you, Chair. I'm sorry, was there a question? I was talking
Nope,
to...
no, there was no question. I just thought,
Oh, as a recommendation,
Yeah,
either
sure.
September 29th or October 6th, it is at council's wish to whichever one they would like to
Right.
add.
I will point out, we can't add a special, but it is nice sometimes to have a regularly scheduled meeting so staff can plan reports coming in for that. So I would suggest we do amend this. Go ahead, Councillor Smart.
Yeah, I would make a motion, but I would make a motion to have a special meeting on October 6th in the schedule, just because I think all of us are going to be quite busy at UBCM to read an agenda that week as well as attending UBCM. So I would make a motion for October 6th.
Before I
to be
get a
added.
seconder, just I want to get sure I get the language right. Would it be a special meeting or just a regular meeting?
It would be a special meeting, but we
Perfect.
would treat it as a regular.
Okay, so a special meeting for October 6th. Is there a seconder for that? Seconded. Any discussion on that amend? Actually, kind of caught this a little bit out of order, didn't I? I should probably have a motion to approve the meeting schedule, then have a motion to amend. So my apologies, that motion would be out of order. If there's no other questions, Perhaps I'll get a motion to approve the
I
meeting
can-
schedule.
I can make a motion to approve the meeting schedule.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you. Moved and seconded. Is there, why don't you take the motion to amend at this point?
And I'll make a motion to amend the schedule to add a special council meeting on October 6th.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. So the main motion is the approval of the schedule as amended. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Should also just have a motion to receive the report. Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. That carries. Thank you, guys. Moving on to 9.4. Public safety improvements for Oak Bay Avenue and Wilmot Place. We'll get an introduction from Mr. Rennick, and then we'll take questions, and access the public can ask questions, and then we'll come back to this table for direction. Welcome, Mr. Rennick.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. The junior deputy director is asleep now. This report is a very brief one, so I will give a very brief introduction. We essentially wanted to outline for council some of the possible changes that could be made to the crosswalk at Oak Bay Avenue and Wilmot Place, which is directly outside of Municipal Hall. There is a change that we are recommending to council that is within council's purview, which is approving a traffic control order to relocate the police post from the south side of the street to the north side of the street, making the existing police post a full-time no parking. We are also pointing out in the report that through council's already approved transportation safety improvements program, that staff will be enhancing this crosswalk with a pedestrian activated rapid flashing beacon. And we also presented for council's consideration the option of replacing the planters with a permanent concrete bulge. And I'm happy to take your questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. There'll probably be a couple of questions. Councillor Smart.
Thank you, and
Councillor
thank you for bringing this report forward. Through you, Mayor, to Mr. Rennick, I just wondered if the curb bulges would include tactile warning strips for accessibility. Thank you.
Mr. Rennick.
Through the chair, yes, future curb bulges in high pedestrian traffic areas, we are starting to convert to using tactile warning strips.
Thank you. Councillor Appleton.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to staff. I'm just wondering, and I understand that costs have increased. $75,000 seems like a lot for a concrete curb bulge. So is this just sort of like the going rate for that type of thing at this stage of the game? I know we're tracking higher on a lot of infrastructure, but it seems steep.
Rennick.
Through the chair, yes, unfortunately, that was an estimate based on the unit rates that we use for concrete and curb and gutter, and essentially looking at the same area that's currently delineated by flexible posts.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a follow-up question. Is the design, and I noticed that the curb bulge example referenced here is the one at the corner of Monterey and Windsor, which just happens to be like a couple of doors down from my house. And I'm just wondering whether or not that curb bulge might be installed on the avenue. Would you use the same height of curb, and would it be the same nature of curb? Because in my experience living close to that curb bulge, despite the fact that it's a curb bulge, people have hit the sign and people have go up over the curb on a relatively regular basis, to an extent that I had never expected that they would. So people are back and forth across that curb quite often. So it's not that high in that location. I'm wondering whether or not what would be proposed for the avenue would be slightly higher, or whether it's just one consistent standard everywhere.
Mr. Rennick.
Through the chair, the detail on that is yet to be fully determined, but I will say that the curb bulge needs to be the same elevation as the rest of the sidewalk. So there are certainly parts of Oak Bay where the sidewalk is not much higher than the road because of successive repaving over the years, where once upon a time that curb was 6 inches high and now it's more like 2 or 3. So it would be important that the height of the curb bulge match the surrounding sidewalk, because otherwise you're having wheelchair users go up before they go down.
Thank you. Councillor Braithwaite.
Thanks very much, and thanks for the report, Mr. Rennick. I noticed that when we're talking about the bulges, those are $75,000, but the light standards, the flashing lights are only $20,000. So where my head goes is, would it not be better to maybe, if we're considering putting the light standards further down the avenue as well? So, for example, at Pharmasave, and where I think it's a very dangerous crossing as well, which is right from the bank, from one side of the bank to the other side of the bank, to the Bank of Montreal, I guess, from the Bank of, or the CIBC, I think it is. That crosswalk there seems quite dangerous and could use a set of lights there as well. So has there been any consideration as to putting lights on those two intersections?
Mr. Rennick?
Through the mayor, thank you for the question. The engineering department typically puts in 1 or 2 of these new installations a year, and we, as you note, have not done any on Oak Bay Avenue. We thought that Oak Bay Avenue in Wilmot would be a good one to start with. We're certainly always making a short list of other locations. We recently installed one at Beach Drive in Dalhousie, opposite the entrance to Willows Park, for example. So that's certainly an area that we could take a look at. We've also heard concerns from residents about Mitchell and Oak Bay Avenue outside of the Garden Works. So there's certainly lots of crosswalks that we could look at doing this enhancement at.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Watson and then Green.
Thank you, Mayor. And a question too to Mr. Rennick, please. Great location to test this out. I think it's the right one on that particular strip. There's more to be done, and I hope our village area plan actually addresses that in kind of a new streetscape approach. But in the meantime, I think this is fabulous. But we had a comment from one of the members of our Accessibility Advisory Committee about the flashing lights and how when you push it, it's not visible to you as the pedestrian that it's actually activated. And so you have this hesitant sense of, have I really done the right thing? And for those with vision impairments, they wouldn't be able to see it flashing anyway. So is there any approach to take to kind of provide that assurance to somebody who's hopefully pushing the button because they want to cross the street?
Thank you. Through the mayor, there are audible systems in use that some manufacturers use. I've noticed that most of the new ones that City of Victoria has installed actually have a voice that says, approach with caution, vehicles may not stop, for example, which I've always thought was a bit on the nose. But there are other potential options out there. You know, there's the audibles where it makes the bird noise when you push a button. It's certainly something that we could discuss with the accessibility committee or with the staff liaison and look at making that enhancement, not just in this location, but in future applications of pedestrian beacons.
Thank you. Mr. Rennick? Councillor Green?
Thank you, through you to Mr. Rennick. Thank you very much. Really happy about the improvements on this crosswalk. I have had 3 very close calls in that crosswalk. It's incredible. But I've also noticed that Oak Bay Avenue is so busy now, and the traffic volume is truly remarkable. Is there any thought given to dealing with not only Mitchell as a second one, but the other 2, and the one near the Penny Farthing and then the one crossing over to Pharmasave? They are equally dangerous for a lot of the same reasons. So just to put a plug in for improvements on the avenue itself, given the volume of traffic now. Thank you.
Mr. Rennick, I think, go ahead.
Through the mayor, the comment is noted. We felt that this was a good one to focus on just because we were thinking of it from the perspective of drivers who are headed eastbound. If they hit the green light at Elgin, it's the first time they've had to stop for quite a while. There's a lot of visual clutter going on. I do also see near misses at the other crosswalks, but I find by that point drivers have significantly slowed down and oriented themselves to the fact that they are entering into a pedestrian-heavy zone. That was why we felt that this was the one to start with.
Thank you, Mr. Rennick. I just have one question, and that's just a question related to the traffic control order that's suggested here. Can you just explain the conversation that happened with police? My understanding of that location originally was it kind of provided a general space there, but also allowed them to look into the village space from that car position. where across the road it wouldn't provide that visibility. Is that, I don't remember that specific conversation. That would maybe just have been an assumption on my part, but perhaps you could just talk to the operational, I guess, reassure me that the operational considerations of the police have been taken into account for the TCO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The members of the police department that I met with are both fairly new to the department, so they may have been unaware if there was additional historical reason for that specific location. My understanding is that it was a convenient location for the patrol vehicles to park when officers were entering the village, and the members with whom I met did not see a significant impact on their operations by moving across the street.
That's helpful to know. In fact, it was a taxi stop, I think, previous to being a police stop, so thank you for that. Go ahead, Councillor Patterson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And just as a follow-up to that, so if the police vehicle location is moved to the other side of the street, then that area, because there's also particularly when delivery vehicles or large vans, whatnot, tend to pull up into that area. So will that be a no loading, no parking zone? Just for clarification.
Mr. Rennick?
Through the mayor, yes, that is correct. The current police post on the south side will be full-time, 24/7, no parking.
Thank you for that. All right, I see no other questions. Any members of the public wish to speak to us on this? I'm looking online and don't see any hands who have raised, but I will give a chance if there's any public input. There's nobody in the room left anymore, so it kind of gives me a hint that there's nobody here to speak to it. Seeing no public input, I'll come back to this table. Perhaps we can get a motion to receive the report to start with. Moved and seconded. Thank you. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. The recommendation here is that a TCO order, can I just, before I seek a motion on that, for the traffic control order, if this passes, it automatically moves to the north side. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. The traffic control order itself is to relocate the police post from the south side of the street to the north side of the street.
Okay. So my secondary question on that one is just, does it make sense for us to provide both options available so that the engineering and police can work and not have to come back here if they want to in future look at moving that space back and forth, or is it better for us to pass the control order that it's to a specific location?
Ultimately, it's council's prerogative. I feel that the traffic control order as presented is adequate for our purposes.
Sounds good. We can always move it back if that's the desire in future. Thank you. Okay, so looking to council to give a motion. Go ahead, Councillor Green.
I'm happy to move the staff recommendation. I believe that was option 1. Is that, or was it option 1 and 2? I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. I have in the staff recommendation, it's just for the traffic control order. That's the motion, okay? Moving second. Right. So right now so option 1 is just the traffic control order that's on the table.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Is there a seconder for that? Yes, okay, thank you. Do you wish to speak to it? Mover or seconder? No.
No, I really appreciate the report and the input. Thank you.
Councillor Smart?
Oh, thank you. I was in favor of option 2, so I won't be supporting this motion. I do think that it is a safety concern with the planter blocks where they were blocking feet. And so my understanding is that option 2 is the one that would actually take away the planter boxes and provide the concrete curb. So I will not be supporting the current motion on the floor.
I seconded the wrong motion.
I may have made the wrong motion.
Okay, that's okay. If the mover and seconder wish to withdraw the motion, we can get a second motion for option 2. Okay, moved and seconded for option 2. That makes it simpler. So option 2 here, just for clarification of anybody watching, that is a traffic control order to relocate the police post and that the concrete curb will just be implemented at that site as well. So that's the motion on the floor. Others wish to speak to it? Go ahead, Councillor Braithwaite.
If this goes through, what happens to the planters?
Through the mayor, we will find another home in consultation with the Parks Department.
Go ahead.
If I may, and you may want to talk to the BIA as well, because I think that they might have some ideas on perhaps where the planters might be useful along the avenue.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All right. I was prepared to support option one. I wasn't entirely clear that doing the bulges at this time with other considerations, but it's I think it's time for us to clean up that temporary thing, which has been there for 7 years. So I'm supportive. I'm happy to support the motion as it's put forward. I don't see any other discussion or debate. So the motion on the floor is option 2, which is both the bulges and the TCO order. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed? That will move forward. Thank you very much, Mr. Rennick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And good luck to you and your assistant. Move now to section 10. This section does not have public input. We have consideration of the heritage designation bylaw HRA 00014, which we heard previously as part of a public hearing. Do we need to have an introduction? I don't believe we do, having just completed the public hearing.
I'll move receipt.
Move receipt of the report. Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed?
I'll move that 1566 Hampshire Road Heritage Designation Bylaw number 4884, 2024 be given third reading.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. Any discussion on third reading? Wasn't, okay. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed?
And I'll move that 1566 Hampshire Road Heritage Designation Bylaw number 4884, 2024 be adopted.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed?
And I'll move that the property at 1566 Hampshire Road be added to the Community Heritage Register.
Seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed? Moving to 10.2, which is the Heritage Revitalization Agreement for 2031 Runnymede Avenue. Same process. We've already had an introduction. So
move receipt.
Report. Receiver of the report. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed?
I'll move that 2031 Runnymede Avenue Heritage Revitalization Agreement Authorization Bylaw number 4881, 2024 be given third reading.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? I'm just going to say, just because this was a little bit more of a fringe one in terms of the heritage additional value on this one, I do think that it's worth just noting that it does provide us, this is the only tool available to us to allow for subdivision, and I think I just appreciate the work done with the applicant and the staff to try to come up with this solution. And I just want to acknowledge the concerns that were raised by the neighbors about possible impacts of this, and I feel comfortable that those are being reasonably well addressed, and the costs are being borne by the landowner for any of the extensions. So thank you for that. Any other discussion before I call the question? All those in favor? Any opposed? Not opposed? That carries.
And do you want me to read the whole next one out?
I do.
Okay. I move that council authorize the mayor and corporate officer to register a covenant under S 219 of the Land Title Act that secures at time of building permit payments of a community amenity contribution, a CAC, based on council's CAC policy of A, single family lot, $6,000 per unit or lot, B, duplex, $4,500 per unit, C, multifamily, $4,000 per unit.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on that? All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed? That carries. I don't see the applicant still online, but they're probably watching on the stream, so good luck with the project going forward. Moving to section 11, bylaws and permits. These are subject to public input. We have Ms. LaChance here to help guide us through these items. So I will go to her initially with 11.1. This is the municipal and regional sewer rates bylaw and preliminary sewage utility budget. Ms. LaChance, and it may be helpful just very briefly to explain the process, how this relates to the budgeting process that follows a little bit later on as well. So thank
Yes.
you, or ahead of it. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Your Worship. That's a perfect prompt. I will let my colleague, Mr. Rennick, get settled. All three of the next items are in advance of the January 1st date, when we will require all of the fees and charges bylaws to be approved by council so that they take effect. These budgets are brought forward in advance, but at any time during the future deliberations for 2025 financial plan, the 5-year financial plan, changes need to be made. We can amend these bylaws, but they do come to council in advance, such that we can have those rates in place and collect revenue starting January 1st. Okay.
Thank you very much for that.
Great.
Is there any other presentation attached to this, or is it just that's the?
Yes, I was hoping, with your worship's approval, to provide a brief introduction to each of the reports. I assume that you'll want to move through each report, move the recommendations, and then approve, and then we'll move through each of them. I would like to just make a couple of notes on each of them.
Sure, no, let's do that, but you know what I'm going to do, just in the interest of meeting efficiency, I'm going to just open this up for any public input at this time. So anything on items 11.1, 11.2, or 11.3, which are our utility rates.
Yes.
If there's any members of the public who wish to speak to us, please let us know at this time. There's no one in the room. Well, there's Mr. Robertson, who's in the room, but a member of the public. But I would just, if there's anybody online, so, and I will leave that open at this point. So if people are watching the live stream, and they wish to call into either join the Zoom or call in, you can do that and raise your hand, and we will get to you, but I'd ask you to do that now so we can get to the public portion. So what I'll do, seeing no hands raised and no public input requested, we can maybe just walk through, as you say, you can do the introduction, we can go through the procedural pieces as we go with each one. So thank you, and please continue.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Your Worship. So starting with item 11.1, the 2025 Municipal and Regional Sewer Rates Bylaw and the 2025 Preliminary Sewer Utility Budget. I'm pleased to bring forward the preliminary budget and the rates bylaws for your consideration. The timing of this report, as mentioned, is in advance of the year end, so that revenues required to balance the 2025 budget may be raised through rates commencing January 1st. The report provides the proposed budget, the related impact on fees, and provides analysis of the key budget drivers for council consideration. Guided, of course, by the council-approved financial planning guidelines, development of the municipal portion of this budget has considered historical spend levels over the past 3 years and has limited increases wherever possible to an expected 2.7%. Any drivers outside of this parameter are detailed in the report. With respect to the regional portion of this budget, based on a fee-for-service agreement with the CRD, operating costs of the CRD core area sewer treatment service are recovered through rates charged to Oak Bay residents and will be then included in these bylaws. The increase in the regional sewer rates is driven by the CRD board-approved budget. It's a provisional budget approved on October 30th and is included in the increases in front of you. Also included are the most recent measure of the cost share percentage. So we have a pretty good estimate, I would say, for the 2025 regional sewer costs we would recover through the rate bylaws. Based on the drivers and the required cost to maintain service levels, staff are recommending the municipal sewer utility consumer charges be increased by 0.3 million or 300,000 or 13.2%. You may recall or be aware that the municipal sewer utility is funded 70% by consumption charges and 30% by taxation. So that increase is attributable to both of those revenue sources. That would translate to a $90,000 increase in taxation to be deliberated on, of course, as part of the final taxation, but would be forecasted at this point to be an increase of 0.25%. Primary drivers that you'll notice in the report, enhanced maintenance programming staff as considered at the October 21st Committee of the Whole and in an earlier report tonight by Council. Also, the planned increase of 2.5% in utility revenues continues to be set aside to address the 2021 valued funding gap of $73.2 million in the sewer utility. Lastly, the total increase in operating costs to be raised from the CRD is an increase of 0.3 million or 10% of their previously billed amount. The rates, as included in the bylaw, are 3.46 per unit for the municipal, and then also a 7.3 per unit for the regional. That has been included. The bylaw is here for first 3 readings. The recommendation is that the budget be approved and the bylaw receive the first 3 readings. If approved, we'll return with 4th reading and approval on December 9th. Both myself and the Deputy Director of Engineering and Public Works are here to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. LaChance. Are there questions? Yes, Councillor, I'll go with Councillor Patterson and then Smart.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Thank you so much for the report. The same question would apply to all of the ones that follow, so I'll ask it once, and hopefully it will be consistent. But just the contribution to reserve funds, will that then be consistent with what the projected balance of the reserve funds would be for 2026?
Chance?
Thank you. Through your chair. Yes, we've continued to follow the 8-year plan established in the Sustainable Infrastructure Plan that will accumulate within the reserve, gain interest, and be used to fund the 5-year capital plan and be used to also balance the longer-term capital plans that we're establishing.
Councillor Smart, then Appleton.
Well, thank you, through you, Mayor, to Mr. Rennick. I was just wondering, with the upland sewer separation project, when it's done, are we likely to see any reduction in the overall impact of the CRD fees?
Mr. Rennick.
Through the mayor, yes, there will be some reduction, and this council had requested that we provide an analysis on what exactly that reduction will be. That has been taken into our work plan, but that has not yet been presented to council.
You. I will note, just from we're in our meetings at the CRD and the Core Area Liquid Waste Committee scheme, the fees that we pay are largely based on intended flows, so we exceed those on a regular basis. So the funds that we have now are sort of the exceeding, so it should come down, but the actual allocated funds are actually lower than our current due to some of the infiltration. Go ahead, Councillor Appleton.
Well, thank you, Your Worship, and my question pertained to pretty much exactly that, and I was just looking for a refresher on just, in terms of the projection of flows. It's talking about apportionment based on flows between October the 1st and September the 30th of the subsequent year. So these are in fact projected flows and not in fact directly measured flows.
Chance?
Thank you. Through you, Chair. The operating cost share calculation is actually based on the prior year. So we're right now forecasting for 2025 budget. We use an apportionment calculation based on the previous year flows. So you're seeing identified in the report up to and including September 30th, 2024. I think it was 30th. Sorry, I might have to check that date, but it'll definitely be September to October, that timeline of the previous, the current year for the next year.
Great.
Okay.
Councillor Appleton?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship, and I appreciate that. Just maybe a quick follow-up. So, and not trying to be obtuse here, but this is a projection. So we're projecting based on previous year's flows, but the previous flows are as measured, not as a percentage of overall flows. Like Oak Bay is not getting projected on a given percentage of the overall flow, but rather something based on a extrapolation from the previous year's actual measured flows, if I make myself clear.
There's the chance.
Yes, and if I may, through you, Chair, just take an opportunity, I will answer your question, but just to take a step back to also provide information for Mayor and Council that as we established and developed this budget, we had discussions about what will these capital investments translate to in terms of flows. We receive an annual letter from the CRD. It outlines the flows that you're referring to. They are as measured by the CRD meters. Correct me if I'm missing anything very technical there. And we are treated as a part of a whole, so a slice of the pie, if you will. And so it is actually a cost-sharing formula that does still rely on actual flows, but we only cost-share in that amount of the whole. Within that letter that we receive, we also receive notification about where our flows may be outside thresholds or outside what the system's been built to do. It is in both of our interests as staff representatives that we make sure we understand the CRD regulations, their own master planning that they have to have approved by the ministry, and that we are able to project forward in the 5-year financial plan reliably how flows will help reduce costs. I hope that helps circle back to your question. Through you, Chair, I'm happy to answer a follow-up.
Thank you. I had to go back to June of this year to find the wastewater things. We are currently at 143% of our allocated amount due to the INI that happens. So it's significant. So it is almost entirely due to the upland. So this will be a significant improvement. Any other questions on this item? So I don't see any members of the public, so I'm happy to come back to this table and deal with this in order. A motion to receive the report to start.
So moved, Your Worship.
Moved and seconded. Need a hand? Thank you. Moved and seconded. All those in favor for receipt? Any opposed, unopposed?
Your Worship, I would move that sewer rate amendment bylaw number 4888, 2024 be read a first and second time.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Any opposed, unopposed?
Your Worship, I would move that sewer rate amendment bylaw number 4888, 2024 be read a third time.
Moved and seconded, thank you. All those in favor? Any opposed, unopposed? Can I just also get the preliminary sewer utility budget be approved as presented?
So moved, Your Worship.
Moved and seconded. I just need a hand, thank you. Any other discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, that carries. There's a chance to 11.2, solid waste fee.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. So through you to Council, I want to brief comments, I promise you. Some of this will be a repeat in terms of introduction, but I'll just whip through that and provide any of the notable comments for you. So I'm again pleased to present the 2025 solid waste fee bylaw preliminary, as well as the preliminary solid waste budget. Of note, before I move into the introduction of the report, a typo was brought to my attention on page 2 under service levels. The service level solid waste disposal should read bi-weekly solid waste pickup, and instead of how it reads currently, which is bi-weekly organics curbside. It was just a typo with the next line, so apologies for that. Happy to take any kind of clarifying comments or questions if that impacted anybody. This report and bylaw are coming forward before January 1st. The report provides a similar analysis, impact on fees, and proposed budget. Development of this budget was also, similarly to the sewer utility budget you just received, based on the approved financial planning guidelines and here's historical spends. Any drivers outside of those parameters are detailed in the report. Staff recommended the solid waste disposal budget and solid waste revenue be increased by $232,000 or 12.5%. Based on the projected number of collection units, this would mean a $40 increase to this annual solid waste fee from $321.21 to $361.21 per unit. Primary cost drivers are price index adjustments as obligated under the existing residential organics collection contract, as well as the staff recommended $12,000 annually, so not additional annually, but a $12,000 adjustment to the budget ongoing to adopt a Rooteware real-time scheduling and customer notification software to replace the existing practice of hard copy and social media schedule releases when there are changes, which can be frequent in a year. The recommendation is that the budget be approved and that the bylaw receive the first 3 readings. Again, if approved, the 4th reading and approval will be scheduled for December 9th. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Councillor Braithwaite.
Thanks, Mayor, and through you to staff. I know that this fee was removed from the property tax bill in 2020, and I'm wondering if staff can speak to that about the reasoning behind that, and maybe if it would ever be under consideration or could be considered to put it back on the tax bill to make it easier for seniors who defer their taxes. Thank you.
Mr. Rennick.
Through the mayor, my understanding is that the reason this was removed from the annual tax bill was to be placed on the utility bills, which are issued 3 times a year, and thus to split the cost up over those 3 bills, is my understanding of why that decision was made in the first place.
Yes?
Thank you. If I may add, that definitely helps with cash flow and billing throughout the year on both sides. And then I would also add that property taxation would result in us raising the cost to cover the service across all residents in the community, whereas this is very targeted to those that that receive the service.
And I would just also note, sorry, she made me think of this. If it's tied to the property tax bill, then it's associated with the assessed value of a property, which means that different residents are paying different amounts but receiving the same service level.
Thank you for that. Excellent back and forth there. Councillor Braithwaite, anything else? All right, Councillor Appleton, and then Patterson.
Thank you, Worship, and just through you to staff. So just understanding that there's been a catch-up with CPI, indexed rates as described under contracted services. And that's so just to confirm, what we've done here is essentially returned it to current value, and what moving forward, this is sort of the standardized value moving forward, with the assumption that there will be potential CPI increases in the future, but this brings us to current standard.
Ms. LaChance?
Thank you. Through you, Chair. That's correct. This brings us to the current rates as obligated under the contract. It is worth noting that the CPI term within the contract isn't limited to the typical CPI that you may be used to. It includes a fuel index, which is also noted in the report. So the blended rate actually comes in higher than, I'll call it our regular inflation, which is not very technical, I apologize. But a good reference point to understand what's showing up in terms of increases here.
Thank you. And then have Councillor Patterson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And just a follow-up, I believe that the solid waste, when it was on the tax bills, the resident who was paying the tax bill had to pay that amount, that it could not be deferred with the rest of the tax bills. So maybe that's something we could just clarify again.
Ms. LaChance?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Chair. I would have to potentially come back to council on that. I'm not aware of any legislation that would exclude that if it were on the property taxation bill. But if it is by way of fee, the deferral is not available.
Thank you. Don't see any other questions, and nobody has popped their hands up still from the public, so I may just start the process of moving receipt of the report and going through the sequence. Sorry, Councillor Watson, you had a question? No. Okay, go ahead, Councillor.
I will move receipt of the report.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed?
And then I will continue to move that the 2025 preliminary solid waste budget be approved as presented.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed?
And that refuse collection and disposal amendment bylaw number 4889 2024 be read a first and second time.
Moved and seconded. Are there any discussion? Not seeing any. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed?
And that refuse collection and disposal amendment bylaw number 4889 2024 be read a third time.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Thank you. And we move to 11.3, the last item on the agenda for you, Ms. LaChance, the water utility rates bylaw.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I will skip the preliminary comments, and I'll jump right in part because the water utility does very closely follow the sewer utility cost drivers, and of course the development and adherence to the financial planning guidelines. The report does include the budget, the bylaw, the impact, and the analysis as well. So the main drivers for the increase in the water utility rate is the enhanced maintenance program staffing, also referenced within the sewer utility increases, as well as the 2.5% of water utility revenues that will continue to be set aside. As a result, staff are recommending that the water utility fees be increased by $621,000 or 11.2%, which is approximately $84 to the representative single-family dwelling. Rates are thus established in the bylaw before you for your first three readings as 86 cents per day and 4.47 for every 100 cubic meter of water supplied. The recommendation is for the first three readings to be approved, the budget be approved, and again, we'll return December 9th for fourth reading and approval. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chance. Other questions? Councillor Appleton?
Just
Smart.
Thank you, Worship. Just something to point out. I just noticed that under the financial impact table in the report, where it talks about cost per single-family dwelling, there's 3 line items that add up to $84 as indicated in financial impact, but the total, under total, is actually incorrect. It says 46. So I'm just pointing it out just for the purposes of just, it adds up to 84 as indicated in financial impact, but just figured for clarity, I would point it out.
Councillor Smart?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, to Mr. Rennick. I just had a question about the comment about the backflow prevention device public works order. I just wondered if, just for my knowledge going forward, will there be a fee associated with that or any wait time? And is that for only new irrigation systems, or is that something that is going to sort of be proactively enforced for existing systems that might not have such a device?
Rennick?
Thank you. Through the mayor, when the CRD brought in the cross-connection control bylaw and CRD member municipalities signed on by amending their own bylaws, Oak Bay started requiring backflow prevention devices on either new build homes or renovations to existing homes that required replacing the water line outside of the house. The only change that's being asked for in this bylaw is the way the bylaw is currently written. In circumstances where a homeowner is only getting a plumbing permit, the cost for the dual check or backflow prevention device is added to their plumbing permit fees. We didn't feel that this was appropriate because these devices are purchased by Public Works, they're delivered by Public Works, they're installed by Public Works, and so we felt it was more appropriate to change it to have it be an engineering permit. So we aren't changing the price. We aren't really changing what happens to a homeowner. It's just simply, instead of pulling a plumbing permit that used to cost $175 extra, now they have to pull an engineering permit for $175. For reasons that are, essentially, we just want to have the work group who's responsible for delivering the service being the one who issues the permits, so that if a resident has questions about it, they're talking to the right department.
Thank you for that. Anything else, Councillor Smart?
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mayor, to staff, and I'm not sure who this would be directed at, but I just wanted to know, with all these increasing fees, particularly on summer water bills for residents, and I think a lot of us have heard of, you know, having a really large water bill in summer. I'm wondering, like, at what point does council potentially consider having more frequent utility bills that would be less cost? And I wonder if staff has given any consideration to, you know, billing every 3 months or every other month in order to help both the district and homeowners with the these significant bills that you see residents post on Oak Bay Local. I got a $600 bill this month, and I'm wondering if we can do something to help things.
Through the mayor, there would be a lot of considerations to changing the billing frequency. Number one is that the water meters are only read 3 times per year, and we have one full-time water meter reader who does nothing but read water meters. So were we to make a change to the frequency of billing, that would change the frequency of reading and may require additional staff. Would also require additional postage cost, additional time for the clerks who produce those bills. So there would certainly be a lot to consider prior to making such a change, and I believe Ms. LaChance would like to add to that.
Ms. LaChance?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Your Worship. So really well said. I would just add that, you know, homeowners can pay at any time We, in fact, on the property taxation, we facilitate monthly payments. If there's ever a need for that, we're happy to work with any resident that comes in to maybe establish the best payment plan that applies. That's very low cost for us, very easy for us to advise, even in terms of understanding some of the fluctuations that may exist seasonally. We would be happy to help with that.
Thank you. I'm just going to throw in nobody's watching at this point probably, but I'm going to throw in a little plug on that one because the finance desk is right outside my office and I hear the interactions, and it's amazing how many times people come in with exactly those kind of questions. How do I deal with this? How do I make sure I don't miss a payment again? All these kind of things, and staff are overwhelmingly helpful to make sure that wherever they can, they help address those requirements from the public. So I just pass on my thanks to the finance department for that. It's the customer service there is excellent, especially with people who are generally upset with a bill. They're often coming away with a reasonable level of smiling. So thank you for that. Sorry, back to you, Councillor Smart.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, to staff, thank you. That was really informative. It's good to understand that. My follow-up question is there any consideration from staff in the future, I don't know, 5, 10, 20 years from now, of upgrading to smart water meters where it might actually become more cost-effective to not walk around and read meters? Thank you.
Mr. Rennick.
Thank you. Through the mayor, the water meters that we have, they have a lifespan associated with them. And certainly in the future, when we are looking at doing a mass meter replacement, I think there's absolutely a discussion to be had about new technologies and just really it's a business case discussion at that point.
Just be ready for the smart meter discussion. Anything else? Any other members of council who wish to address or have questions? I'm not seeing any, so I need someone to just go through the same process again on this.
Move receipt of the staff report, Your Worship.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. All those in favor? Any opposed? Unopposed?
So I will move that the 2025 preliminary water utility budget be approved as presented.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. All those, any discussion? I should just ask that. Nope. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed?
I would move, Your Worship, that water rate amendment bylaw number 4887 2024 be read a first and second time.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? This is the last chance to talk to it, so I'm just going to say on behalf of all these three things, they all reflect, and I appreciate they all reflect an increase, not an insubstantial increase, although for various parts. They do reflect a commitment from the council to supporting the Engineering and Public Works Department to get in front of and overall drop the total cost of operating our life-critical water, sewer, and storm drain systems, and I just want to express my appreciation for the council. We've committed to doing this work and to funding it and to supporting the crews required, and so it always gets a bit of a shocking number, but you know, in the big scheme of things, this is how we actually drive our costs down for current and future residents. So I just want to reflect that because sometimes these numbers get caught up, and this is one chance we have a chance to kind of talk to it. So with that, I'm happy to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Not opposed? In the third reading?
Your Worship, I would move that water rate amendment bylaw number 4887 2024 be read a third time.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. All those in favor? Any opposed? Not opposed? That concludes those items. But before we move to new business and adjournment, I just want to say we have Mr. Ed Robertson in the room here with us, overseeing everything. This is his last meeting, and so you hear lots of sad sounds for people at home who can't pick it up on my microphone. I just want to take the opportunity. So we just made the comment about council support for engineering and public works and the necessary work being done. For those who don't know, everybody in the room knows, but for those at home who might be watching, Mr. Robertson has been incredibly impactful as our former director of engineering took on another role. He came in here and really has helped build the team that's doing all this work, has helped bring a long experience of public works and engineering in other jurisdictions to this body, and brought many best practices here and helped guide a team that is, we have an exceptional group of engineers and leadership in public works and other things that we have to build on, but it took a lot of work, and that work will be ongoing with Mr. Rennick. But I just want to take the moment to thank Mr. Robertson on behalf of council for. Thank you. Do you wish to say anything? I wasn't actually intending to ask that until I saw you stand up, so I'm glad I did.
Yes, as I'm still staff to the end of the week. Thank you. I appreciate that. I've really enjoyed serving in Oak Bay. It was a bit of an unexpected change to retirement, but it's been great. I've really enjoyed it and enjoy the team that I get to work with each day, and all of you as council as well. It's been a different experience for me being so involved from the desk over there. And I know that Mr. Rennick will do a great job of continuing to move the department forward and dealing with all the challenges that are there. There's lots of things to make a very interesting career, for sure, having been through it once before. So, yeah, just appreciate it, and thank you.
Councillor Green, you wanted to add something? You may want to put on your microphone just for.
Thank you for everything, Mr. Robertson, but I just wanted to ask, oh no, tears. But you're not really going away. We may see you periodically or not? That was my understanding.
Through the chair.
You can answer that as best you can, Mr. Robertson.
Yes.
Well, I'll say farewell now.
Monday nights will never be the same. Yes, we're having ongoing discussions, but I want to take a break away and give Mr. Rennick clear space to be in charge of the department. So we'll be having discussions after I return from a vacation in January. But I have really enjoyed working here, and I better, yeah.
We'll leave it there. I think what you heard from Councillor Green there was an appreciation again for the work that you put in there. So thank you, Mr. Robertson. All right, that was not on the agenda item. So thank you, Mr. Robertson. Is there any new business from members of council? And then I'm just looking for a motion to adjourn. Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Thank you, everyone. What was the